Hey there, welcome to Bread Arrows. Tonight, we've got hours of chilling horror stories combined with soothing rain sounds to help you relax and sleep. Before you drift off, leave a comment below and let us know where you're listening from and what time it is. If these stories give you chills, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Get cozy and let the fear take over. The sky tonight is darker than I have ever witnessed before. It swirls with a slow, creeping malevolence, growling and warning of things to come. My thermal mask is pulled up to my eyes, but my cheeks and nose still burn crimson with the bitter Arctic cold. Regardless, I stand in line with the others, waiting to board the icebreaker that will take me from the research station. The winds tonight are too savage for helicopter transport, so an icebreaker it is. It's a nuclear-powered vessel, Russian Federation. The gray-white ice chunks crash against its reinforced hull. Spray carries up to the red flag, with its hammer and sickle emblazoned on the side. I'm not sure if the ship's nuclear nature makes me feel more or less afraid, but I don't have a choice. 7 researchers are always selected to transfer, always. And tonight, I am one of those 7. My name is Max Volkov. I spend alternating months working on a cryogenic research station in the Laptev Sea. The work is not as monotonous as you might expect. The pay grade is actually rather impressive. The isolation is the worst part. The loneliness interspersed with moments of intense stress and lightning-like panic. We get satellite internet on the good days, but it's patchy at best. If you enjoy your streaming videos at 144 pixels with 20 minutes of buffering time, then the station is the place for you. There are about 150 of us at any given time, and honestly, it's kind of pleasant during the day. In rare hours of Arctic summer, the sun sparkles off the cryogenic pipes and the railings in white and bright silver. The mood is cheerful. Everyone has their purpose. Everyone has their role. And then there are the other times. The other times you'll find yourself standing on the observation deck in the grim hours before dawn, frozen in place as you desperately try to fix the shoddy job the engineer before you did on the generator that powers the ice drill, made all the more difficult with the torn and battered thermal gloves that limit the motions of your already shaking fingers. The protective goggles quickly fog to the point of uselessness, so you remove them, only for the icy wind to lash at once into your eyes. What can I say? There are good days and bad days. Can't complain. My shifts on the station are typical. As I mentioned, 1 month on, 1 month off. We get helicopters back as a squad of about 15 or 20. We go our separate ways once back on the mainland. And then I'll see some of them again next month when we return to work. Occasionally, some of them will get moved to other stations. It's pretty straightforward, but there's an anomaly, one that I've always wondered about. I've asked around, but no one is able or perhaps willing to give me a straight answer. 5 days before the end of my shift on the station, 7 of my colleagues are selected. Randomly or otherwise, I don't know. They are chosen late in the afternoon, told to gather their belongings, and then by night they are gone. Moved to another station is all I'm ever told on the matter when I can actually find someone to give me an answer at all. This happens without fail. 5 days before the end of my shift, every shift, and has done since I first began the work earlier in the year. The people that are selected, I never see again. Most times, if I even know them by name at all, they are only acquaintances. But sometimes, I've known them personally. I had the contact details of a man who was chosen 4 months ago, and a good friend of mine, guy named Victor Kostenko, was called for the previous assignment. But they've both stopped answering their calls. Most of us use basic phones provided by the company during our shifts on the station. So it's possible the devices were just ditched in favor of better models upon their return to civilization. But still, I can't shake the unease. I'm not sure why I seem to be the only one concerned. Not that it matters now anyway. Today marks 5 days before the end of my shift, and for the first time, I find myself as one of the researchers selected. Normally, when I'm able to catch their departure for myself, they leave by helicopter. But tonight the sky is too fierce, so the aforementioned nuclear icebreaker has pulled itself up alongside the station. Why exactly our departure has to be on this particular night? Why our journey is important enough to warrant a nuclear icebreaker to personally escort us to the new location? I don't know. I asked some of the other 6, my fellow chosen colleagues, but they know just as little. One by one, we are ushered down the line, out of the biting wind, from the edge of the platform and into the body of the ship. As the blizzard hammers down overhead, we are led through heated and narrow metal corridors and into a briefing room of sorts, where we awkwardly take the offered seats. The ship groans and churns. The nuclear reactor hums steadily from down below, and 2 men make their way between us to the front of the room. One walks slouched, his beard and hair scruffy, mid-50s perhaps. I recognize him. He makes appearances on the station from time to time, but he's not a regular resident, nor do I know his name. He places forms on the desk before us as he meanders from person to person. The other man's pace is measured and deliberate, straight-backed. He turns at the head of the room and takes us all in with cool silence. He wears an immaculate white shirt beneath a blue-gray sweater and a naval cap, also in white. It is ringed at the base and visor in sleek black and shining gold, and his shoulders are bedecked with epaulets in the same colors. Once the scruffier man has handed out the last form, he stands in the opposite corner, chewing his tongue as he looks us over. The man in white steps forward. "Gentlemen, my name is Captain Anderson, and I am in command of this icebreaker." Icebreaker. What the hell? Why would a tiny team of researchers need to be transported on a nuclear icebreaker? I'll get right to it. The forms before you now, if signed, will bind you to the Arctic Research Non-Disclosure Agreement. Your involvement in this operation will be entirely classified. You will be forbidden to discuss the operational logistics, machinery, or any self-assumed purpose of the assigned station, even to members of your own immediate family. For all intents and purposes, any military involvement in your assignments will be purely auxiliary, operating on an ad hoc basis in the event of threat to life, weather events. The captain clenches his jaw and scans the room left to right. You have all been selected for this temporary position based on a combination of factors, including your specialist knowledge, your time served, and the results of your personality and psychological assessments. You are welcome to refuse this assignment. If you choose to do so, you will be escorted off the ship and back onto the station, where you will see out your allocated time. If you accept the offer, you must come to a decision in the next few minutes. It is recommended that you spend the journey time reading through your contracts. If upon docking at the assigned station, you decide that you no longer wish to sign the document before you, then you will be given a room and confined to your quarters for the duration of your service, and may remain confined for a period of up to an additional 2 weeks, depending on the schedule of the ship in question. Is that understood? His question is followed by a strange silence, one which eventually breaks into a series of low mumblings and bewildered nods from the people around me. Should you choose to accept, your pay rate for the following 5 days will be increased tenfold and will, in practice, be worth the equivalent of 2.5 months of solid service. My colleagues exchange a series of glances and raised eyebrows. The energy in the room changes somewhat. You will be expected to perform your role to the best of your ability, of course, the captain continues. And as discretion is of the utmost importance, to ask as few questions as will allow you to see out your duties. His sharp gray eyes stop on mine just for a moment before flicking over to meet those of the fellow in the corner, the scruffy man who occasionally visits the station. My station. A chill passes through me, but I say nothing. I will now ask if anyone would like to refuse the offer assigned and return to the station. Now is your one and only chance to do so. Nobody moves. Nobody speaks. I thought about it, I really did, I swear. This whole thing has me set very much on edge. And this assignment, this offered assignment, this man, this military guy. Who the hell is he to issue us job terms and warnings and ultimatums? A part of me wants to scrunch the document into a ball and throw it in his face and march proudly back onto my station where I belong. But this opportunity to venture out into the unknown, this is some real exciting stuff. I don't even care about the money that much, to be honest. I've been given a chance to see behind the curtain, to find out what happens to the 7 who leave the station, to find out what's so important about our destination. Mysteries have been presented to us, mysteries that demand solving. I have to know. I just have to know. So I stay seated. I listen to the dulled roar of the wind through the walls. Perhaps that's how they convince the 7 to stay every time. Maybe the money is just so we can rationalize our decisions. A tense moment passes. Then the captain looks over our shoulders and nods at someone at the back of the room. I turn in my seat to see an officer raise a radio to his mouth as he steps through the door, speaking into it as he walks down the corridor. A minute later, the rumble of the reactor below grows like rolling thunder, and the ship, I can only presume, as there are no windows in the room, groans into slow life. The captain nods to us, and then to the man in the corner, and takes his leave, strolling away at once. And so we begin our voyage to the assigned station, plowing onwards through the blizzard. I read through the non-disclosure agreement before me as we make our journey over the ice. There's some seriously intriguing concepts in here. Makes me feel a bit like a spy, though there's some terrifying stuff too. The time drags on. I wonder exactly where it is we're going. Left with nothing but the sounds of the reactor, the flicker of turning paper, and the occasional grunt or cough from my colleagues, my mind begins to wander. They swirl with curious, dark, clouded thoughts. Dread creeps up on me. It ebbs and flows, coming and receding like the tide, and I start to wonder if I've made a huge mistake. We were forced to decide so quickly. I tug at my collar. My stomach turns. I look up and meet the eyes of the man, still standing in the corner. I clear my throat and stand up in my seat. "Excuse me, mate. Don't I recognize you? I see you on the station sometimes." The man is silent for a moment, then scratches his beard. "My work takes me from station to station. You have a good location. Less stormy than most. And what about the one we're going to? Will it be stormy there?" I ask. The man sighs, not with frustration, perhaps just with tiredness. Yeah, it'll be stormy all right." The others seem a little emboldened now. The seal is broken, and the questions start coming. "Which station is it? Will any of us have been stationed there before?" "No," the man replies. "No, you won't have been there. It's one that ain't charted officially. It doesn't even exist. Is it government-owned then? Like a secret research facility? Is that why we've been taken by an icebreaker?" The scruffy man's eyes dart to the door at the back of the room, and he rubs his nose. "It ain't a research station as such. The machinery and the systems will be similar to what you're used to. However, as the captain said, for all intents and purposes, any military involvement in this assignment is officially ad hoc, in the event of emergency. Less said the better, etc. If it isn't research," I ask, my blood, for reasons unknown, pumping fierce, "then what is it? What is its purpose, and why is it a secret?" Silence falls, and the man, in a low voice, replies, "Honestly, lads, you don't need to concern yourself with the station's true purpose, nor do I recommend you try to understand. Please, I don't even know myself, I swear it, and it's better this way. I appreciate that this is a frustrating answer, but I must emphasize that it is in all of our best interests for you to just do your work, take your money, and go home. Do you understand me?" I nod quietly, and the crew alongside mumble their acknowledgments. The gears in my mind begin to turn and grind bitterly as the curious ship sails on into the night. It was well into the earliest hours of the dark morning by the time we arrived. The sky still black and angry as we depart the icebreaker. I slip and stumble against the rail as the ship rocks over the surface of the shifting ice floes. We all signed the non-disclosure agreement, of course. How could we not? The captain lights the ship alongside us, and as we huddle awkwardly on the snow-covered platform of the station, he goes to exchange some words, unheard, with a man in a uniform I do not recognize, obscured mostly anyway by an enormous white parka. I squint my eyes through the blizzard and take in my surroundings. The station is colossal, bigger than the one we departed, and hectic even at this time of night. The place is alive with people in heavy thermal suits and military uniforms. Soldiers can be seen patrolling at every level of the giant metal framework, rushing to and fro. A group passes right by us. Most of them have the Russian flag emblazoned on their arms, but a couple towards the back have Norwegian insignia instead. Floodlights and searchlights illuminate the snow in thick, heavy streaks as they scan the bridges and platforms. Distorted shadows are thrown across their surfaces by the rails and pipework. But inside the framework, protected by the great iron skeleton, there is no drill equipment that I can see, no research apparatus at all. I raise a hand to my eyes to shield them from the snow. I take a step away from the group and stare, even as a powerful beam of light washes over my face. Inside the crisscrossed metal tower is an enormous, monstrous cryogenic stabilizer, the largest that I have ever seen. Each segment must be the size of a transport truck at least. It is colossal and terrifying in a way I do not quite understand. And standing here on the platform, only a few meters away, I find myself feeling very small indeed. The stabilizer disappears behind the beams of the tower that supports it, and below the surface of the platform. It extends presumably deep down under the ice for whatever purpose. I don't know. I am suddenly slammed into from behind. I stumble in shock and turn to see who pushed me. A roaming light shows me a man with a hard hat in his outstretched hand. His eyes are bloodshot red and shadowed with dark circles. He's a mess, and when he looks at me, it feels like he's staring right through me. "Are you lot the replacement crew then?" He croaks out in a voice hoarse beyond exhaustion. I exchange looks with the men around me. "Yeah," I reply uneasily. "Yeah, I think we might be." A siren suddenly sounds at the far side of the framework, a loud and obnoxious wail, and we jump and start. And alarmed, well, as new arrivals do, the embattled man before me does not even flinch. He just closes his eyes and starts shaking his head. "No," he mutters, then louder, "No, no, no. Not again." He slams the hard hat into my stomach and marches past. The soldiers have begun bellowing orders, but I cannot hear them above the wind and the blare of the siren. The platforms and the pipes light up alternatingly in orange and blue. Fear ripples through me as the platform beneath starts to shake. Captain Anderson from the ship is suddenly in front of us, barking orders. He's hastily reading off a list of names, telling my colleagues where to go, and in a chaotic scramble, they do as they're told. This does not seem the time or place for questioning of roles. The ground shakes. I hear the ice crack against the legs of the station. And for that to even be possible, for me to hear them above the bellows and the roaring gale and the shriek of the siren, they must be colossal indeed. I can see some of the frozen sea out of the corner of my eye, and it's a picture of wild, dark, and churning fury. But my gaze is focused on something else. Blood pounds in my ears to join the cacophony. I'm vaguely aware of the captain shouting my name, but I fail to copy his orders. He steps forward now, shaking my shoulder vigorously, but I cannot move. I'm frozen in place in blind terror and do not even know why. There's something about this station that isn't right. It isn't right at all, and I cannot tear my eyes from the great stabilizer. The terrible stabilizer, obscene in its size, is no longer still. It grinds and shakes with the storm, and I watch in disbelief as it starts to retract, as if something of some unknown force is dragging it desperately below the surface. The great stabilizer grinds. Its monstrous metallic howl reverberates through the platform that I stand upon with shaking legs. The stabilizer is moving. There's no doubt about it. Something is pulling it slowly down below the surface. I can see a section retracting. I watch as it feeds reluctantly through a series of monstrous gears from an adjacent, slightly smaller tower. The captain is still shouting into my face. The snow and the beams of passing searchlights wash off the shine of his gold-black visor. His words eventually start to break through the wail of the siren and the rush of the wind and into my petrified ears. Max, it is Max, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. The captain's eyes flash as he nods, drawing back a little. Look to the right of the tower, Max. Just behind you. You see that gray cylinder? I do. Waves of the siren's orange and blue light roll across it again and again. Yeah, I see it. The reservoir, right. For the hydraulics. The captain laughs out loud. A disturbing and ludicrous sound amidst the tumultuous, relentless chaos. Smashing, he says, clasping a rough and heavy hand on my shoulder. And you feel your feet on the ground. You have your bearings. Yes, Captain. Brilliant. That's your station, old trap. Off you go on the double. He tips his cap and strides off across the platform, back to his ship. I watch him go for a second. Then I feel the blood return to my legs. Let's go, Max. They're counting on you, I hear from behind. Yes, right. This is my assignment. Here we go. Here we go. My feet splash across the surface of the platform as I head for the nearest metal mesh stairs, fastening the hard hat I'd been rudely gifted onto my head. The entire ground is like a rippling mirror, illuminated in flashes of white, blue, and orange as soldiers sprint past me in formation. Their shimmering reflections below run with them, distorted by the sheets of ice. My hands slip right off the watery rail as I ascend. I stumble past my fellow workers. I've already lost sight of the 6 I arrived with. They could be anywhere by now. I cross the bridge over to the reservoir. I can see the pipes and tubes to the hydraulic cylinders. Not quite the same as the ones back on my station, but similar enough. A sudden crunch from behind has me swear in fear and swivel at once. Through the iron cage of the tower, the massive stabilizer suddenly jolts down. An entire truck-sized segment disappearing out of sight and into the shadows below. Good Christ, what the hell is this place? I mutter breathlessly, cold snow streaking down my face. I fight my way through the storm to the cylinders. There's a team of about 9 or 10, difficult to tell, all swarming around the pumps and control valves. A guy in goggles looks over to me. Hydraulics, he calls through the snow. A great boom of thunder shivers through the sky to accompany the scream of the siren. Yes, I think that's me, I call back. The goggled man nods and points to a section of cylinder. Open that up. See if it's working, quick as you can, mate. Jesus. I push through the bustle of my new comrades, adrenaline pumping, and I turn to hastily look through a box of tools for equipment I'll need to remove the covering. A searchlight beam from afar scans across my immediate surroundings, and I catch a flash of white coat thrown about in the wind as its owner passes me by, crossing from an opposite bridge. It was the guy the captain was talking to earlier, down on the loading platform. I turn to look up at him, drill in hand. It's embarrassing, is what it is. The man in the white coat says to the officer at his right as he strides past. He stands tall and walks with grim purpose. 4th siren tonight. Is this a joke? This is the kind of shoddy control I'd expect over on the Danish station, not the bloody Russian Federation. Commander. The goggled man shouts, snow flying from his lips as he stands up straight, and the commander tips his hat to him in return. Status, the commander bellows back rigid, and hands quickly clasp behind his back as the wind drags his coat about his shoulders. I don't have a good look at his face, but I can see a thick white beard whipped around his jaw. No major issues here, Commander, Goggles replies. Hydraulics understood to be clear. For crying out loud, the commander mutters, casting an eye shrouded in shadow from his visor over my new colleagues. Then what the hell is the problem here? Too much slack on the stabilizer. He turns to the officer to his right. Find out what Station Alpha and the Norwegians are up to. The amount of times I've had to tell Norway to sharpen their protocols. This month is bollocks. To it. Let's bring this under control. I don't want to deal with the fifth siren tonight. The commander and his entourage clatter their way across the bridge. I watch him raise an arm and gesture angrily to the groaning stabilizer, looking like little toy soldiers beside it as they pass by. We worked through the night. The snow eventually begins to fall back into a more bearable flurry. The ice calms and starts to settle. The cracks against the station's legs grow decreasingly violent, and the siren mercifully cuts out. The stabilizer, too, is steadily, brutally hauled back up through the tower and mechanically re-extended. Like a fool, I'd expected my shift to end there, but for me to be allowed some desperately needed rest. But I was mistaken. My shift continued on through the night. It turned out there had been a minor fault with one of the hydraulic systems after all. But since the siren had ceased, we couldn't work out if this particular malfunction had been responsible or not. We agreed collectively not to mention it. It was not until the silvery light through the clouds above suggested that the sun had risen that I was dismissed. Like a zombie, I marched to my assigned dormitory and collapsed onto a narrow bed against the wall and fell at once into welcome and total sleep. I was the first one to awaken. My bunkmates were all snoring away. I rub my eyes and bring my legs over the side of the bed, gently cracking the joints in my arms and back. The clock on the wall tells me it's 12:20 p.m. 5 hours of sleep. Great. I run a hand down my face, but I actually don't feel too bad. A piece of paper taped to the wall below the clock tells me that Hydraulics Team B are expected to return to work at 1:30 p.m. I'm assuming that one's mine, based on the accompanying time that we were dismissed. Someone has scrawled across the paper in pencil in the margin. It's today's date, along with Commander's orientation, 13:15. I quietly open the door, and after a quick splash of water to my face, a change of clothes, and an admittedly rather gross brush with a borrowed toothbrush, I decide to use my spare hour to look around the station. The weather has calmed, and whilst the sun is not exactly shining, it's pleasant enough for now. The station is just as busy as it was last night, but the air of panic has dissipated, thankfully. During my walk, I encounter one of the 6 from my previous station. We shoot the breeze for a few minutes. I learn the location of the lockers where our belongings have been deposited, and immediately regret my decision to use the toothbrush of the unknown soldier. It's remarkably easy to tell which workers on the station are new arrivals and which have been here for longer. You can see it in the lines on their faces, in their eyes and expression, the way they carry themselves. The soldiers, however, are unreadable. I ponder their purpose as I make my way through the inner corridors of the station's hub. If you walk like you have a clear direction in mind, you typically won't be bothered, I've found. I'm intrigued by what appears to be a small library nestled within the walls. A cluster of shabby bookshelves hold a range of battered books. There's some maps here too, of the Laptev Sea and of the station itself, taped to the wall. It's as I'm studying one of these maps when something catches my eye. A word scratched deliberately into the metal of the wall alongside. It's not obvious, but now that I've seen it, I can read it as clear as day. Victor, it says. Victor. A brief, sharp surge of adrenaline passes through me. Could this have been carved by Victor himself? By my friend, the very friend who was selected as one of the 7 for this station last time? It must have been. Surely knowing that he was here sets me grinning, and I shake my head in disbelief. Why would he carve his name into the wall? I look around the room. I undo the tape on the adjacent poster and peel it back, but there's nothing but blank wall behind. After a moment of consideration, I grab hold of the little bookshelf directly behind the scrawling and grunt with effort as I push it to the side. Sure enough, hidden behind and against the wall are a series of further carvings. I'm not sure why, but I feel compelled to shut the door to the library room. So I do so before squatting down to study what has been written. There's a number carved here, 47-1-26. A date, perhaps, not like any date I've ever seen. Maybe it's a military system I'm not familiar with. There's also a drawing, a crude one. It looks like a little square about to be devoured from beneath by a larger, bizarrely S-shaped form, or half of him at least. A semicircle with a split for an open jaw. It's literally just a bunch of lines carved into the metal, but it unsettles me in a way I can't explain. Next to this drawing is the phrase, "Don't trust Petrov," in capital letters. Petrov? Who the hell is Petrov? The sounds of footsteps in the corridor beyond bid me to grab the bookshelf quickly and drag it back into place. Workers push through the door, and I nod to them upon my exit before they have a chance to ask what I'm doing. 47-1-26. Don't trust Petrov. A drawing of a semicircle and a square. They all mean something, I'm sure of it. Victor left them behind. I know he did. With only 10 or so minutes left until the scheduled briefing by the commander, I decide to dwell on my findings on the station's larger observation deck. An excellent vantage point for views of the surrounding ice. I can see a few icebreakers dotted around in the distance from here. One of them could well be the vessel belonging to Captain Anderson. I can see another 2 stations like this one spread out in the distance, and if I squint, I can just about make out the rough form of a 3rd far against the grim horizon. There's a guy standing nearby, eating a ration pack. First person I've seen since arrival not actively engaged in a task of some kind. He seems in decent spirits, but his eyes are glazed and tired. He nods at me, and I nod back. Then he gestures to the faraway station with his ration pack. That's the Norwegian station, he mumbles. Station Beta, they call it. Ah, I reply. I'm not sure what else to say. My name is Max. Nice to meet you, mate. Hey, he replies. You too, pal. Dan, anything you can tell me about the stabilizer, Dan? What stabilizer? He asks, and I furrow my brow in confusion. I'm about to gesture to the colossal metal segments held in the tower when he chuckles at me. I'm just screwing with you, mate. I know what you mean, but I don't have any answers for you, I'm afraid. No bloody clue. They're keeping something locked down, That's all I know. It moves with the storm. He looks out at the ice. And it's always stormy here. You've been here long, 10 days. I'll be done in another 4. Second time they've assigned me to the station. To my surprise, I feel a flood of relief. Ah, so people do come back from the station then. And of course they do. The idea that they wouldn't, I silently brand myself a fool. Of course people move on from here. Why wouldn't they? Second time, I ask. How long was your first shift? 5 days. They keep doubling your pay with every subsequent return, apparently. He takes another bite, chews thoroughly. And a man needs it. So what's up with the military presence? He shrugs. Who knows? Keeps the Americans away, perhaps. Whatever they're up to here, it's important, clearly. I mean, look at all this. A trio of helicopters flies overhead as he spreads out his arms. I watch them pass. Yeah, maybe. I shift on the spot and think about what I saw scrawled on the wall. Would it be unwise to bring it up to this guy, to Dan? Screw it. You know anyone called Petrov Dan? He gives me a strange look and pauses. No, he replies. You can't say that I do, though I only work on the uppermost deck, so my pool of acquaintances is relatively small. The military police here are nicknamed the Petrovs, if that's of any meaning. No, but thanks anyway. He eyes me again, his expression changing, and he stands straight up. You know, you ask a lot of questions, Max. To be honest, I'm wondering what you're even doing here. They don't normally send blokes like you, not in my experience. I laugh awkwardly, but Dan does not return the laughter. He just holds my gaze for a tense moment, then shrugs and looks back out to the ice. I breathe. I guess your skills are just in demand right now, he muses. Realizing the time, I thank the guy for his conversation and head down to the briefing by the commander. I'm cutting it fine, but thankfully, I'm not the last to arrive. He doesn't say much, really. Just roughly goes over some basic logistics, highlights important duties for the day, and officially welcomes us to the station. It's not a particularly cheery welcome, nor is it particularly interesting. He mentions that we would all be subject to a lengthy debrief in Norway upon the end of our service. And then there's something else he says, something that stands out, something I dwell on well into the day. Whatever you may hear, he says, scanning the room, one eye bright and shining like polished brass, the other blinded, a scarred white-gray. Whatever you see, it is suggested that you push that aside and save it for the debrief. I would remind you that the Russian government takes dissension from the non-disclosure agreement very seriously. Very seriously indeed. His eyes meet mine, as do I, and I'm worse than those in Moscow. I can assure you, the tension holds the air still and thick and heavy. Then it breaks away like ice with a sudden clap. The commander nods and gestures to the door. It's clear that the meeting is over. My day is uneventful. I learn little else and make no mental progress on the mysterious scrawlings, presumably left by Victor himself. My shifts are broken up into 6 hours on, 6 hours off. Rough, and it's night time when it gets rougher. The snow returns, the swirl and seethe of the blizzard, as if it's angry about the station's very presence in its domain. I shiver as I check the lights on the enormous control valve before me. The tension now is palpable, far beyond anything I experienced in the commander's briefing. This is something else. All teeth are set, every pair of eyes itching to glance up at the silent siren. Soldiers and workers alike, all on edge, waiting, praying that the siren doesn't go off. The impending potential shattering of the peace is perhaps worse than the shattering itself. And eventually, of course, it does. The siren cuts through me like a knife, and the world of metal around us is casting glows of orange and blue, all along the bridges, the rails, the metalwork, and the gears. The multitude of platforms and the giant towering framework skeleton, and the stabilizer groaning inside. The chaos returns. It's stressful beyond words, but the problem, wherever it came from, is, after 15 minutes or so, fixed, and the siren stops. We breathe a collective sigh of relief as the brutal orchestra of our contemptuous domain cuts us some slack for a while, because after another tense hour, it sounds again. And then after that, it sounds again. I feel sick. This is relentless. Is this why they're so desperate to get us here? Because the previous crew were literally fit to collapse. But this time, the siren does not stop. It just keeps on wailing, screaming its distress out into the night. Christ, it's so bloody loud. The frustration we feel grows into anger which quickly breaks down into shivering nerves, and then melts further into cold fear. Why won't it stop? Where's the commander? The guy in charge of our section, Goggles, as I've nicknamed him, removes his helmet and runs a hand through his hair. Again, he shouts, "Check through it all again. Have we missed anything?" The stabilizer lurches to my left. It swings slowly to the side and crashes into the side of the metal tower that contains it. The vibrations of the shock thunder through the entire station. "Oh hell," Goggles bellows in dismay. "Where's the bloody captain?" And then there is another noise. A boom that ripples through the air from the distance. I rise on shaking legs and lean over the rails, looking through the snow out to the ice. An icebreaker of some kind, closer than before but still a ways away, is firing upon the shifting ice floes. Its turret lights up in brilliant white, and then half a second later, they are followed by the booms and the rattle of fire. There's something in the ice. More ships are coming through the haze. I can see them. I can see their lights, and the ice between them shifts and swells in ways that don't make sense. The dark surface rises colossal. I wipe the snow from my eyes. I can't quite make it out, and I realize everyone is distracted by the light show out at the ice. The workers have shifted away from their stations. I can see all around. If I'm going to look for answers, the time is now. So I seize the moment, and with a quick look behind, I sprint away through the shadows of the rails, keeping my head low. I make brisk pace down the shuddering stairs. I cross the platform, trying to look like someone who has a clear goal in mind. And I'm about to push through the central hub of the station when 4 helicopters fly overhead. My mouth drops. To fly in this. They must be insane. But they're carrying something between the 4 of them. They're carrying the length of a colossal stabilizer cable, the same type as held in the tower, and weighted down at either end by what I'm presuming must be massive, gargantuan anchor points. I know I shouldn't be wasting my moment, but I can't help but watch as they fly out to the ice, illuminated fleetingly in the glare of the icebreaker fire. And then they hover in place, as much as they can given the weather, and the cable is released. It drops down through the dark, towards the shifting ice, and smacks into the surface with a crash. The spray slow and massive as the iron sinks. Blood pumping, I turn and push into the hub. The map I saw in the library, I recreate as best I can in my mind, and I orient myself. I head to the staff quarters, the officers. I march with purpose past the groups of hurried soldiers, careful not to make eye contact, and at the end of the corridor, I find what I'm looking for. The map in the library had to be marked only as a door with no room beyond. But that was impossible. And sure enough, there's a room here, shrouded in darkness. Filing cabinets line the walls. There's a desk attached too, empty except for a bottle of vitamin D tablets. But this is good. Filing cabinets. Personnel files in here, perhaps. Maybe I can find information on Petrov or about the stabilizer. I know I'm an idiot. Most would just take the money, keep themselves to themselves, and go home. That's presumably why they get selected. But I'm not one of them. I'm just not. I run a hand over the cabinets. All locked, of course. Curious steel padlocks are attached to each and every door, all in the pattern of 00-0-00. A light bulb goes on in my head. I recognize that pattern. It's the same as the numbers Victor wrote on the wall. 47-1-26. All right. Bloody hell, I mutter to myself, cracking my knuckles before setting to work, starting with padlock number 1 and working my way down, then across. Don't fail me now, Victor. I work fast, and I can't be more than a few minutes, but the time feels like it drags on. I'm expecting to be rumbled at any second, for some officer to barge in and arrest me. But they don't, and on cabinet number 7, the padlock snaps open. I grunt with desperate glee, dragging the door open and rifling through the folders and files within. I grab a handful of them and drop them onto the desk, flipping them open and trying to absorb as much as I can. I don't really want to stick around. Frustratingly, the files aren't arranged alphabetically. There doesn't even seem to be any coherent order at all. There are pages and pages of reports, some with words scrawled across in pen or black redacted bars stamped over them. All cryogenic operations at Site Gamma 3 to cease immediately. Report to Admiral Volkov. December 1986. I flip through another. I'm careful not to let the condensation drip from my face onto the paper. Urgent redirection of Arctic nuclear program. Project Iceberg budget to ARSEGN-3 discovery. 17 to 18 recommended, pending. January 1987. I don't have time to take in all the text. I just absorb what I can. Personnel to be assigned to new stations, Alpha A plus Alpha B, for no longer than periods of 2 weeks maximum. Standardization with Norwegian and Danish stations, Beta A recommended. Greater personnel numbers suggested during winter months. Entity's true nature to remain at highest level of classification. I expel a breath of air from my lungs in a cold and unwelcome burst. Entity. I lift the file up towards the room's sole source of light. It flickers as the wind howls outside and the siren blares. A scrap of torn brown paper falls from amidst the file and lands on the desk. My heart pounds as I pick it up and read it through. It's a segment of a poem, handwritten in fine ink. Alfred Lord Tennyson, 1830, it says at the top. Below, below the thunders of the upper deep, far, far beneath in the abysmal sea, his ancient, dreamless, uninvaded sleep. The paper is torn, and the poem ends there. It's almost like I'm watching myself from above as I stuff the papers back into the file with pink-tipped and trembling fingers. As I slam them back into the cabinet and remix the combination on the lock, and stride, pale-faced and stomach lurching, back through the corridors, I realize that I have made a terrible mistake. I should never have agreed to make the voyage here. I should never have signed the non-disclosure agreement, and I should never have allowed myself to get caught up in this madness. The entity's true nature. The entity, don't panic, is all I can tell myself as I return into the storm, as the snow batters renewed against my head and my back, as the lightning flashes, and as a terrible and alien roar sounds out over the ice. It stops me in my tracks. It is by far the worst sound I have heard since my arrival, and I've been privy to a great many disturbing sounds. It echoes out over the riding ice and up into the swirls of the sky, and a great jarring force from below suddenly throws me to the ground. I slip across the surface of the platform, scrambling up onto my elbows, barely able to believe my eyes as the edge of a huge iron structure is forced up against the far side of the station from beneath. I watch it as it smashes into the crane, one which promptly disconnects from the station with the sound of tearing metal and crashes down into the churning ice. The stabilizer grinds against the tower. All around me now is pure panic, and with a cataclysmic crash, I am powerless to do anything but watch as the great stabilizer wins the struggle and smashes through the side of the skeleton tower in a shower of broken metal. It tears through the edge of the station. It swings round towards me, and it brings with it an enormous wheel from below, dragged around the edge of the cracked far platform. My screams become one with those of the siren, and a pair of rough hands grab me by the back of my jacket. I am hastily hauled across the platform through the snow as the stabilizer swings by. It becomes clear that the cables run through the colossal iron wheel, and between them, they tear up the edge of the station and smash the loading bays and the remaining cranes to shreds as easily as if it were made of paper. The roof of the station's central hub is destroyed in a hail of shattering beams and concrete as the stabilizer crashes relentlessly right through it. The hands release from the scruff of my neck, and I slump to the white ground with a splash. None of this feels real. I'm in a dream, a terrible, swirling nightmare. I turn to look up at my savior, and a flash of lightning out at the ice illuminates the profile of the commander, his good eye shining in keen copper, the other shrouded in shadow. His coat is torn, and his beard is whipped wild. "To your stations, lad," he bellows in a voice like the rippling thunder, glancing between me and the stabilizer. This night's not over yet, I tell you now. I scramble back through the puddles and grab a hold of a nearby rail, trying to bring myself to stand. "What the hell is this?" I shout at him. "What are we going to do?" "Our duties," he barks back. More helicopters fly out overhead, struggling through the wind as the shuddering stabilizer is steadily dragged out to the ice. Overhead, the station trembles. "Confirmed, Commander," the officer shouts. "Catastrophic failure in the Delta section, but it's too late. They say there's nothing they can do now. They'll be dealt with come the morning." The commander replies, "Tell me about the pneumatics." "The emergency reels." "What have we got?" "Pneumatic reel 1 is gone, Commander," the officer replies. "Completely destroyed. Reels 2 and 3 are fit for operation, though reel 3 has been damaged. Get them affixed to the tower, or hell, what's left of it." Soldiers sprint past in manic squads across the platform. The icebreakers fire into the ice, and great rolling booms follow them. "Both of them?" the officer asks uneasily. "But Commander, the stabilizer's current duress would suggest." He stutters. If we lose both the reels, get them affixed," the commander roars. "Now, bloody now." The officer swiftly brings up his arm into a salute and sprints off through the broken, shifting shadows of the rails and metalwork. "Don't make me ask you again," the commander grunts at me. Then he turns to take his leave, but I call out after him, foolishly and desperately, over the groan of the storm. Never in my life have I felt such dread. I'm drowning in it. It feels like the end of the world. "What is this place, Commander?" "You have to tell me. What's down there?" "I know, all right. I know about the entity." "What is it? What are you hiding?" The commander stops in his tracks. His coat ripples and thrashes in the wind, in time with its distorted image, reflected in the flooded platform below. He lights up from all angles in glaring orange, and then blue, orange and then blue, random bursts of white from the searchlights, from the lightning, and from the artillery fire of the distant icebreakers, accompanying the colors of the siren in intermittent flashes. The shadows thrown are ever-changing and void black. He swivels on the spot and marches right up to me. I stumble back in alarm, but he grabs my collar. "Questions, questions, questions," he mutters loudly above the clamor. I hate when the questioners are brought on board the station. You know that. I bloody hate it. His eyes are wide and mad as he begins to drag me across the platform. His worn and hardened features, his white beard, they're deceptive. I now realize the commander is strong, and must be years younger than his looks would suggest. "You know where they love questions, Max. That is your name, isn't it? The submarines." His words register sharp, and a tide of panic crashes against my broken constitution. I try to fight the commander away, but he trips me, throws me to the ground. "They're struggling for crew," he says. "They weren't prepared for active deployment tonight. I was about to order them down anyway, but you know what? I think they'd benefit from your expertise. You're of no use to me on the station tonight." Visions of being trapped in a submarine flash through my mind. Claustrophobic, cold, unforgiving metal, surrounded by only the icy, churning black waters and the horror beneath the ice. The pressure growing as we sink deeper and deeper. "No, no, I won't," I shout. His features are shadowed once again, but his silhouette shines bright against the thunderous night sky. "So you know about the entity. Well, you're not the only one who knows things, Max. I know that you abandoned your station last night. I know that you shirked your one duty to the station, and I know that the hydraulic section during your departure has catastrophically failed. With every no." He takes another step closer, his voice rising. My heart lurches in distress. "Get your ass in that bloody submarine, and maybe I'll forget a few things. You understand me. Now on your feet. Are you a man or a bloody dog?" He hauls me up and drags me through a corridor of crisscrossed pipework and down onto a lower platform on the opposite side of the station, a section with an edge that remains crack-free, unharmed by the drag of the colossal and broken iron wheel. He squats and hauls open a door in the ground with a clank. It reveals a rusted ladder that extends down toward the ice. He looks at me. Oh God, my options whirl around in my head to the beat of the siren's wails. I force my snow-soaked fringe from my eyes. What the hell do I do? What can I do? Could I run somewhere? And then what? If by some miracle the station survives the night, they'll find you eventually, won't they? There's nowhere to run to, and you'll be court-martialed. Can civilians even be court-martialed? Would I just be shot on the spot? Or worse, forget being court-martialed. This is about your life. I swear with frustration. And what if the stabilizer pulls the entire station into the ice? What then? A submarine might literally be the safest place for you. But why the commander's change of heart? What the hell is his game here? All these thoughts and more froth and bubble, like the foam of the great ice flows below. But at the end of the day, there's no point pretending that my decision wasn't already made. In times of intense stress, chaos, and disarray, when your options are as complex as mine, it is just easier to simply follow the orders of the person in charge. Maybe with hindsight, I would have acted differently. I would have come up with some genius plan. But I don't have that luxury in the fire of the moment. So I furrow my brow, I call the commander a prick, and I ease myself down onto the ladder, bracing myself against its icy rungs. See you on the other side, the commander shouts at me. I see him raise a radio from his belt to his mouth. He kicks the trapdoor closed as I begin my shaky descent down. I climb rung by slippery rung. The sounds of the ice below grow louder. There's a monster down here. I'm sure of it. What else could it be? The entity. Rung after rung. Shouts a megaphone-distorted voice from below, breaking my train of thought, and I nearly slip from the ladder in fright. I grab a tighter hold and twist my neck to see below. There's not much of the ladder left. It goes down a couple more meters, and then the end is lost to the swirling, swelling waters. The uppermost hub of a great gray submarine has surfaced beside it, rocked subtly in the churn. I didn't even hear it rise. A man in thermal gear has opened the hatch on top of the hull, his upper half visible. He waves at me. Hydraulics, his voice blares through the megaphone. I nod as obviously as I can. I force the fear from my lungs to shout out a reply. Yes, bloody yes, that's me. Great. Jump, his reply. Jump. I can't bloody well jump. Shouldn't there be a boat or a bridge? I can't hear you, mate, megaphone replies. Come on, quick as you can. I bang my head against the ladder in anguish, but before I can psych myself out any further, I use the adrenaline to the best of my ability, powering down the remaining rungs of the ladder, turning, calculating, and I push myself off. My legs kick through the ice and salt of the sea air. My arms flail, and I land with a thud on the hull of the submarine. Megaphone reaches over and grabs my jacket. He hauls me through the hatch and down into the vessel's body. I use the rungs of the submarine's ladder to slow my descent, but essentially crash to the floor and remain so, deep. I roll onto my side, coughing. I'm in hell, I choke out. Not yet, you're not, Megaphone replies grimly, helping me to my feet. He then climbs the rungs, reaches up, and draws the hatch closed with a slam. The sound of the storm and ice are muffled instantly, largely replaced by a low and all-surrounding rumble. Alexei, he says, sticking out his hand. I take it, shivering. Max, thanks for coming down, Max. We appreciate it. Yeah, well, I didn't really have much. I feel my surroundings shift. I flinch as my ears pop, one after the other. We're going down. This is all so sudden. All of this, it's just go, go, go. It's insane. Only moments ago, I was watching the stabilizer get ripped out of the tower itself. What could do that? What kind of thing has such power? What if the whole length of the stabilizer unravels? What then? The recent memories flash through my mind, and I have to grab a hold of a nearby line of pipe to keep myself from staggering. Alexei looks at me with sympathy. Hang in there, mate. You're better off in here than up there. Trust me. They tell us they're losing the stabilizer. I nod, breathing deeply. In and out. In and out. Come on, I'll show you to the exhaust valves. They aren't operating quite as they should be. Wouldn't normally be cause for major concern. But you know, these are relatively uncharted waters, if you'll pardon the pun. I don't respond, but straighten and follow him to the engine room further below. The rumble of the water around us is paradoxically rather calming if I don't think too much about it. Alexa continues, we're glad to have you. Our normal hydraulic guys were stolen yesterday for maintenance on the Hoder. The what? He gives me a look. Don't you know the drill? It's an acronym. Hydraulics operated deep ocean rig. We call it Hoder. Military folks sure love their acronyms. I remember what I had to read in the report in the secret file. All cryogenic operations to cease immediately. 1986. Report to Admiral Volkov. I thought they stopped all the drilling. Yeah, for research, obviously. But the Hoder's tiny. They send that thing down on rare occasions for samples from the seabed. Bewildered and struggling to process, I come to a stop in the engine room. Alexei clasps me on the shoulder and directs me to the tools, then takes his leave, telling me where to find him if I need him. And so, like a programmed machine, I just set to work. I do what I do best. It's why I'm supposedly here, after all. I look around me as I work. There's no windows. I haven't seen any since entering the submarine. I quite like it. I can sort of pretend that none of this is happening. I can pretend that I'm back on my own station, working happily. I haven't been blackmailed into a military submarine. I'm not trapped hundreds and hundreds of meters beneath the ice. I was never sent on an uncharted station into the middle of the ocean. I'm not at risk of losing my life in a world of unimaginable nightmares. And I'm not at the immediate mercy of an unspeakable terror that sleeps beneath the surface. Except it's not asleep anymore, is it, Max? I push these thoughts aside and work as best as I can on the hydraulics before me. I don't know how much time passes, but once I believe I have completed my tasks to a satisfactory degree, I head through the submarine corridors. They are narrow and cold. The clanks of my footsteps echo and reverberate softly around the walls. They're also curiously empty. I always imagined military submarines to be busier. I do, however, find some other people when I push through a metal door at the end of a corridor and into a room near the front of the top of the submarine, a room affixed to the central hub. The level of light is low and green. The room is illuminated by a series of dim bulbs overhead. To my surprise, the front of this room is curved and not made of metal. It has instead been built with glass, or at least some other thick, transparent material. Beyond is only the deep and dark of the ice. The submarine's weak beam lights catch on nothing but water. There are 5 others in here with me. One is clearly the captain, a man in gray. He turns in his chair and nods at me. Another is Alexei, who smiles. I'm still taken by the glass. What the hell is this? I ask. Military subs don't have walls of glass, do they? I thought they were solid metal. Alexei shoots me another questioning look. Well, of course they don't. But this isn't a typical sub, is it? Some of the other members of the crew have turned to look at me with similar curiosity. One of them, I realize to my bewilderment, is shrouded in what appears to be religious robes of some kind. I feel like I'm losing my mind, I choke out. What are you doing on board? Well, I'm the submarine chaplain, he replies cautiously, raising an eyebrow. What? You mean like a priest or whatever? Why would they need one of those on a submarine? Everyone is staring at me now. The confusion on their faces is even greater, perhaps, than the confusion on mine. It becomes clear that I am not the type of person they were expecting to get sent to them. Their silence is sharp. The engine grinds, the ice rumbles, and then several of them lean forward and start asking me questions at once. Wait, you were briefed, right? You've done the exposure training. You do know about the entity, right? Did you even get the psychological assessment? No, I stammer in return. I really don't. I just wanted to, for crying out loud. The man in gray shouts suddenly, running his hands through his hair. Who the hell sent you down here exactly? The commander did, I reply with frustration. For bloody sake, what the hell is this problem? This is bloody insane. You shouldn't be here. I know, I sputter out in retort. The chaplain steps toward me. He takes my hand in his and speaks earnestly. Are you a religious son? Are there any spiritual convictions you feel comfortable drawing from? No, not really, I reply. Look, if someone could just tell me what's going on, I would really, really, really appreciate it. Is there a message from the Bible I could read out for you? Something to ease your soul, the chaplain asks. I pull my hands away and grimace. I'm sure he's only trying to be helpful, but to be honest, his presence here is freaking me the hell out. What kind of submarine needs a chaplain? I don't even know any Bible passages, not really. I know a couple maybe. The classics. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. From dust we came, and to dust we shall return. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. He sure does. I mumble this last passage out loud. The chaplain nods at me. Yes, the book of Job, chapter 1. A work of true literary prowess. Alfred Lord Tennyson himself called it the greatest poem of ancient and modern times. Alfred Lord Tennyson. Where have I heard that name before? The gears turn in my head. I can see before me so many pieces of the puzzle in my mind's eye. I just cannot fit them together. The eyes of the crew bore into me as we stand there, cast in the grim green glow of the submarine's luminescent bulbs. "I'd like a reading from the Book of Job then, please," I say quietly as the submarine pushes through the deep. The chaplain nods and draws a small Bible from his pocket. "Certainly, lad. Any particular passage?" The numbers scratched on the wall in the station library return to the forefront of my mind. 47, 1, 26. Yes, actually," I mutter. Chapter 47, verses 1 to 26. The chaplain frowns his brow but nods. "I'm not familiar with that particular passage, I must admit." He thumbs through the pages, and as he scans over the lines, he pauses and shoots me a look. I hold his gaze, and perhaps reluctantly, the chaplain begins his reading. His voice is low and somber, every word a wave upon the rocks. "Can you pull in Leviathan with a fishhook, or tie down its tongue with a rope?" The atmosphere in the room tightens at once, but the chaplain licks his teeth and continues uninterrupted, the cadence of a speech like drums, dark drums, drawing us down into the deep. "Can you put a cord through its nose, or pierce its jaw with a hook? Will it keep begging you for mercy? Will it speak to you with gentle words? Will it make an agreement with you for you to take it as your slave for life? Can you fill its hide with harpoons, or its head with fishing spears? If you lay a hand on it, you will remember the struggle and never do so again. Any hope of subduing it is false. The mere sight of it is overpowering. None are fierce enough to rouse it. Who then is able to stand against me? Who has a claim against me that I must pay? Everything under heaven belongs to me." The chaplain's chest rises and falls in time with the beat of his words, but I am not audibly aware of his drawing in of any breath. He dutifully reads on through the verses. When it rises up, the mighty are terrified. They retreat before its thrashing. The sword that reaches it has no effect, nor does the spear or the dart or the javelin. Iron it treats like straw, and bronze like rotten wood. His reading brings me to nothing but distress. I can see this distress reflected in the faces of the crew around me, their features caught in the shadows of the rippling green. But they can no more ask him to stop than I can. It is hypnotic. The chaplain goes on, but sure as the night must fall with the sunset, he too must eventually draw to a close, and he does so with a voice that shudders and ripples down through my core. Nothing on earth is its equal, a creature with no fear inside. It looks down on all that are haughty. It is king over all who hold pride. Shapes emerge through the darkness ahead. The external beams of the submarine reveal a section of the great stabilizer through the murk, and I watch as we drift past it. There is energy in this place, in this submarine, in this secret world beneath the stormy ice. I drop my gaze to meet the eyes of the captain, the man in gray. "Please just tell me," I whisper. "Tell me about the entity." A beat passes. The man in gray turns his back to me and looks out into the water, adjusting the submarine's course, but he replies. "The entity was discovered by the cryogenic drills in 1986, he says somberly. "We don't know what it is. To be frank, nobody does. I admit, however, that it is entirely possible that the folks at the top know more, and are just keeping the information a secret. The sonars give us an idea, a rough picture of the entity's form, but we have never been able to see it all at once. We believe it to be asleep, but it's always churning, ever changing, writhing within the deep. A shiver passes through me. The man in gray speaks on. The entity seems to be more or less alert, with the varying cycles of the moon and different seasons of the year. Use firepower when necessary to try to push the entity in directions we deem desirable, and keep it down with the stabilizers. There are further stabilizers connected to the other 3 primary stations: Alphaby, the Norwegian station, and the Danish station. The stabilizers are easier to attach at the beginning. He swallows. It's harder now. They tell me they're afraid that the entity is going to wake up. Though given tonight's report from the station, it's quite possible that the entity's sleep has come to an end. My head throbs, and my mouth has gone death dry, but I lick my lips and give voice to my clouded thoughts. So why don't you just destroy it? Nuke it or whatever. Surely it must be more cost-effective and less dangerous than whatever the bloody hell is being done right now, right? It's not about the entity itself, Max, says Alexei to my left. What do you mean? How can it not be about the bloody monster? The intelligence suggests, Max, that the entity is sitting on something, slumbering above it. Something important beyond our understanding. The current working assumption is that the entity is situated above what we believe to be a gate. Of what manner, exactly, we don't know. But the fear is, he sighs, the fear is that if the entity goes, if we actually succeed in destroying it, then whatever lies beneath the gate, I finish, it would be wide open. Unguarded, perhaps, Alexei nods. And we don't know what might come through the other side, he says quietly. Shadows dance in the corners of my vision. A deep and terrible cosmic fear rushes through me. I have never before felt such a sudden and powerful surge of vicious realization, of understanding, of seeing for the first time how utterly, truly tiny I am, how comically insignificant I am, barely comparable to the smallest spark in the shortest wire, in the most purposeless machine in the entire station. Bile rises up to my throat, and I choke it down. My stomach contracts, and my breaths come sharp and shallow in time to the sudden beeps of the sonar. I'm vaguely aware of everyone rushing back to their stations. I can feel the submarine further adjust its course. The chaplain is muttering under his breath, a low and steady chanting, and the shifting gray-black shapes beyond the submarine's windows light up a little brighter with the boost of the beams. The beams reflect off massive lines of stabilizers, all interwoven and connected, dragged across the submarine's field of vision through the deep. They're huge, so impossibly huge. In the water, in places beneath and around the stabilizers, hardened, it shimmers in ways that don't make sense. It absorbs the light like the black of space, and yet somehow seems to return it in strange new patterns across its form, shifting gray to green to black over and over. I cannot look away. I'm aware of shouting voices. The vessel shudders and fires. Torpedoes are launched through the water ahead, and when they connect with their target, with the terror beyond size, they flash just for a second, providing only the briefest glimpse of their surroundings. They show me colossal, writhing, long and interwoven limbs, jointless and furious. A flash, further sections of stabilizer that ensnare them, pulled taut, grinding. A flash, great black and shifting, rune-like lines and markings across these titanic appendages. I can hear a song. It flows with the roaring beyond in the deep. The melody, jarring at first, changes rapidly. It becomes quickly soothing, and the sound of it makes me feel. It makes me feel calm. It comes with none of the dread I felt with the words of the chaplain. Instead, it makes me feel whole, like I matter. I take a step closer to the glass. The submarine weaves its way through the stabilizers. A flash, and I see the material of the great twisting limb pull taut over something skeletal, the size of a mountain. A flash, and I see one of the limbs thunder through the dark water, right in front of the glass. The submarine takes a hit, and I stumble to the floor. A siren blares, but I still do not look away. A flash, and I see an eye. Out there in the dark, I look into it, and it looks back into me. The membrane peels back, and a brighter eye pushes through. The pupil, long and rectangular. This pupil breaks apart into smaller circles beyond count as I watch, mesmerized, and it splits open further. The surface of the eye rolls back to reveal only darkness, pitch void, nothing. And the world goes black. I dream only of the song. Its melody does not dissipate when I awaken. I am in a medical bay of sorts. I'm not sure where. The presence of the commander at the far right side of the room would suggest I am back on the station. A window is visible in the corridor, beyond the open door. The pale light that streams through would imply that the station survived the night. For a moment, we exchange no words. Then I break the tension. "You saved the station then?" I ask. The commander replies, "Always do." My head spins. My joints ache like hell. The song is still playing. "You found a way to calm it." "The entity, there's always a way," the commander replies grimly. His eyes do not leave mine. He clenches his jaw. Another pause, then, "Thank you," I whisper. The man's eyebrows shoot up. His surprise at these words is clear. "Thank you," he repeats. "And what the hell would you be thanking me for? You knew I wanted answers, right?" I reply with a weak grin. "But you weren't able to tell me directly. That's why you sent me to the submarine, so I could find some." The commander chews his tongue. He does not return my grin. "Is that what you think?" he replies quietly, his voice strained. A flicker of emotion passes over his face. Regret, pity, or perhaps guilt. He turns away. "You seem like a decent guy, Max," he says to me. "I'm sorry they sent you here, truly. And I'm sorry I sent you down to the submarine, in the state you were in last night. You would have done nothing for the station, but drum up further panic. And whilst the failure of the hydraulic section cannot be placed entirely on your absence, we do not know how the night might have unfolded had you remained at your post." I swallow. The sounds of the song fade momentarily. Did anyone die last night? I'm not sure if I even want to know the answer, but my compulsion for information bids me to ask regardless. The commander sighs. 14 from the station, and we lost an icebreaker. The choppers were still plucking survivors out of the ice. An icebreaker. They lost an entire icebreaker. I try to imagine the chaos that took place on the waters, whilst I was beneath the surface in the submarine. How did it go down? Did the entity breach the surface? Was the ship torn in half like a toy, smashed into pieces by a length of rogue stabilizer, crushed into shrapnel by the drums of the hammering thunder? I wonder if it had been Captain Anderson's icebreaker. I wonder if he made it out alive. There's no way my absence was responsible for the destruction of the tower. for the damage caused by the stabilizer. There's no way. There's just no way. I was part of a team of about 10 others. I couldn't have had that much impact. There's just no way. But still, these rationalizations do little to ease the guilt. The song helps. It returns. It soothes me. The commander tips his cap, his expression grim, and makes to depart. But he pauses at the door and turns back to me one last time. "Max," he says, "do yourself a favor. Just keep your head down, do your work, and take the ship to the debrief in Norway in 3 days' time." His good eye shines with sorrow before he turns to leave. "And quit snooping around. I know you were in the backroom cabinets. If I catch you in there again, I'll throw you overboard." An attempt at a joke, I think. He chuckles awkwardly, and I chuckle back. But the air is one of sadness. The song helps. It mellows me. I listen to it play through my head as the commander leaves, and his footsteps echo away down the corridor. And for the next 2 days, I follow the commander's advice. I try my hardest. The stabilizer is gradually hauled back in. Pneumatic reels are fixed and groaning under the strain, supposedly, hopefully, doing their job. Helicopters bring us parts and grids of metal for repairs. The platforms are cleared of debris. The work goes on. I am present only in body. My mind twists and turns and constantly swirls. I dwell upon the mysterious scratchings left by Victor on the library wall, the true nature of the entity, the things I heard and saw in the dark beneath the icy waters. I think about the files locked away. I know the combination. I could go back. I could try and learn more. The gate. I could try to find out what lies beneath the gate. I wonder how they manage to stop the entity if it's truly awake. And the song just keeps playing. I find myself humming along to its haunting melody. Other workers shoot me a glance as the day progresses. I have to keep checking myself. The song agitates and stresses my thoughts and theories into a fever. I begin to wonder if there are ways back onto the submarine, just for another look. One more look at the entity. That's all I need. Just one more look. One more look. I think about that eye. Terrible and yet incredible. The following nights are uneventful, as I had come to expect. But none are so chaotic and wild as the night that the stabilizer was torn from the tower. The storms rage on, but the icebreakers are not called into action. They watch cautiously from the sidelines out at the ice as the waves crash ceaselessly against their hulls. And on the 5th day, I find myself here in the break room, enjoying a rare and not entirely within the rules burst of satellite internet, recording my experiences into this email to you, Victor. Apologies for the formatting. I wanted the words to flow, as my thoughts did at the time the events took place. I'm breaking the non-disclosure agreement here, so don't screw me over. Besides, the connection keeps dropping. I'm not sure if this email will even get through to you. Maybe if it does, this will be the time you finally reply to me. I hope you're all right wherever you are. A window in the wall beside me shows the approaching storm that gathers in the distance. Lightning crackles suddenly against the horizon, and the hairs on my forearm rise. I've taken a risk and gone against the commander's advice. An opportunity has risen, you see. The the little drill that Alexei told me about, is going down to the seabed tonight to collect samples. You can fit people inside it, about a dozen or so. I requested to go down with them, down to the bottom of the ice, just for a chance at another glimpse, a glimpse of the entity. Not that I told them, of course. I was refused, but I was informed by one of the officers that the pneumatic-operated deep platform will also be going down a little later in the night for the same purpose, I presume. I've had a little look around. It's a strange-looking thing, like a big metal square. Well, not that big. Big enough for maybe 6 or 7 people, connected to the station via tubes and pipes and cables. The floor is made of 2 different metals, with a crack that runs down the middle. And they need volunteers. They're here in the break room with me now, waiting to be allowed on board. They're all chattering excitedly, asking all sorts of questions, guessing what they might find or see down there in the dark. And I'm going with them. I have to know. I have to. I just have to. I wish you could hear the song, Victor. It's like nothing I've ever heard before. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Anyway, I'd better sign off here. I think they're calling for us. Hopefully, I'll get to see you soon. All the best, Max. The espresso machine hissed its final breath of the night as I wiped down the counter at Mountain Brew Cafe. The digital clock on the register read 9:47 p.m., and the last customer had left 20 minutes ago with their decaf latte and a hurried goodbye. I pulled off my apron, counted the tips from the glass jar beside the register, and smiled. $63. Not bad for a Tuesday night in Cedar Falls, Colorado. The bell above the door chimed as I stepped out into the crisp mountain air. October nights here cut right through your jacket, and the stars hung so close you felt like you could pluck them from the sky like apples from a tree. My beat-up Honda Civic sat alone in the parking lot, covered in a thin layer of frost that sparkled under the streetlights. Cedar Falls wasn't much to look at during the day, but at night it transformed into something magical. The town nestled between 2 peaks like a secret, population barely scraping 3,000 souls. Most people drove through on their way to the ski resorts up north, never bothering to stop. That suited us fine. We liked our quiet. I climbed into the car and turned the key. The engine coughed to life, and warm air slowly began trickling from the vents. Now came the nightly ritual, what to listen to on the 20-minute drive home. I scrolled through my phone, past the same playlists I'd been cycling through for months. Classic rock, indie folk, some electronic stuff Ethan had recommended. All of it felt stale tonight. The radio offered nothing but static between 2 weak country stations, and one that played nothing but 80s hits. I sat there for a few minutes, engine running, heat finally starting to chase away the cold. Maybe I'd just drive in silence tonight. Sometimes the quiet mountain roads were better than any music anyway. But then I remembered YouTube. I'd found some interesting ambient channels there before, stuff you couldn't get on regular radio. I opened the app and typed in mountain ambient music. A few results popped up, but nothing grabbed me. Then I tried night radio station. That's when I saw it. Midnight Waves FM. Live stream. 237 viewers. I I shrugged and tapped the video. The audio came through my phone's speaker first, and immediately I knew this was different. The music was haunting, ethereal, a piano melody that seemed to drift like mist through a forest, accompanied by sounds I couldn't quite identify. Rain maybe, or wind through pine needles. The whole thing felt like it was calling to something deep in my chest. I plugged in my headphones and pulled out of the parking lot. The drive home had never felt so perfect. The music seemed to sync with the winding mountain road, with the way my headlights swept across the dark pine trees, with the occasional glimpse of the valley, lights far below. It was ambient electronic mixed with acoustic guitar, some jazz piano, and every so often a song with vocals so soft and mysterious they seemed to come from another world. When I finally pulled into our driveway, I didn't want to get out of the car. The music was still playing, still pulling me deeper into whatever spell it was weaving. I sat there for another 10 minutes, just listening, watching the frost form on my windshield. Our house sat on the edge of town, where the paved roads gave way to dirt and gravel. My parents had bought it when I was 12, drawn by the isolation and the view of the valley. Most nights I loved that isolation. Tonight it felt perfect. I finally forced myself inside. Mom and Dad were already asleep, and my younger sister Katie was probably in her room with her headphones on, lost in her own world. I microwaved some leftover pizza and headed upstairs to my room. That's when I decided to actually look at the video. I pulled up Midnight Waves FM on my laptop and saw what I'd been listening to. The image was mesmerizing. A girl sat in what looked like an old radio station booth, surrounded by vintage equipment and softly glowing displays. She had silver blonde hair that caught the blue light from the control panels, and she wore a dark sweater that seemed to blend with the shadows around her. Her pale green eyes were focused on something off-screen, and there was something almost otherworldly about her stillness. But it was the setting that really caught my attention. Through the window behind her, instead of a normal cityscape or landscape, there was what looked like deep space. Stars twinkled in impossible colors, and nebulae swirled in slow, hypnotic patterns. It was obviously some kind of digital effect, but it was so well done it looked real. The booth itself was a perfect replica of an old-fashioned radio station, complete with analog dials, vinyl records stacked on shelves, and warm amber lighting that made the whole scene feel cozy, despite the cosmic backdrop. On the desk in front of her sat an open notebook, and I could just make out the words Luna's log written on the cover. Luna, that had to be her name. I watched her for a while, fascinated by the subtle movements. She would occasionally adjust a dial on the control board, or flip through pages in her notebook, or simply gaze out at the swirling stars. Her movements were so natural, so fluid, that for moments I forgot I was watching a video stream. The music continued to weave its spell around me, and before I knew it, it was past midnight. I reluctantly closed the laptop and went to bed, but the haunting melodies followed me into my dreams. The next morning, I woke up thinking about Midnight Waves FM. During my shift at the cafe, I found myself humming melodies I'd heard the night before. The day dragged by slowly, and all I could think about was getting back to that mysterious radio station and its enigmatic host. When 9 o'clock finally arrived, I practically sprinted to my car, This time I went straight to YouTube and searched for Midnight Waves FM. It came up immediately, and I noticed the viewer count had dropped to around 150 people. Luna was in the same position as before, though she was writing in her notebook instead of adjusting controls. She wore a different sweater tonight, this one a deep forest green that complemented her pale complexion perfectly. I started the drive home, but this time I paid more attention to the music. It seemed more melancholy tonight, filled with minor keys and distant, echoing sounds that made me think of empty mountain valleys and forgotten places. The vocals, when they came, were whispered in languages I didn't recognize, but somehow the emotion behind them was crystal clear. Longing, that's what it was. A deep, aching longing for something just out of reach. By the time I got home, I was completely absorbed in the experience. I went straight to my room and opened the stream on my laptop again. Luna was still writing, her pen moving gracefully across the pages of her notebook. The cosmic display outside her window showed what looked like a distant galaxy, spiraling slowly in shades of purple and gold. I found myself studying every detail of her face, the way the light played across her features, the almost imperceptible rise and fall of her breathing. There was something so peaceful about watching her, so soothing. It felt like discovering a secret world that existed just for me. Over the next week, Midnight Waves FM became part of my daily routine. I'd listen on the way to work, stealing glances at my phone when I could. During slow periods at the cafe, I'd find myself humming the melodies. And every night, the drive home became a sacred ritual. 20 minutes of perfect music, and the promise of spending time with Luna afterward. That's when I started to notice something strange. The viewer count was dropping. What had started as over 200 people was now down to around 50, then 30, then 20. By Friday night, when I checked the stream after getting home, there were only 12 viewers. I told myself it was just the natural ebb and flow of internet content. Channels gained and lost viewers all the time. But something about it bothered me. How could people discover something this beautiful and then just leave? Friday night was when things got really weird. Ethan came over for our usual gaming session. We'd been best friends since middle school, bonding over our shared love of obscure indie games and our mutual status as outsiders in a town where being different wasn't exactly celebrated. He was the only person I'd trust with my deepest secrets, and normally we told each other everything. But I hadn't told him about Luna. We were playing some cooperative shooting game, the kind that required constant communication and teamwork. Usually we were pretty good at it, but tonight I was distracted. Every time there was a lull in the action, my mind drifted back to Midnight Waves FM. I wondered what Luna was doing right now, what music she was playing, whether she was writing in her notebook or gazing out at the stars. "Dude, you're getting wrecked," Ethan said, nudging my shoulder as my character died for the third time in 10 minutes. "What's going on with you tonight?" "Sorry, just tired, I guess." I respawned and tried to focus on the game. "Tired? It's barely 10 o'clock. Since when do you get tired before midnight?" He had a point. I was usually good for gaming, until at least 2 a.m. on weekends. But tonight, all I wanted was for him to leave, so I could go back to the stream. "I don't know, work's been exhausting lately." Ethan paused the game and turned to look at me. He had dark hair that always looked like he'd just rolled out of bed, and intense brown eyes that seemed to see right through whatever bullshit you were trying to sell him. Max, you work at a coffee shop in a town where the most exciting thing that happens is when Mrs. Henderson's cat gets stuck in a tree. How exhausting can it be? I wanted to tell him. The words were right there, ready to spill out. I wanted to explain about the music, about Luna, about how peaceful it made me feel to watch her in her cosmic radio booth. But something held me back. Maybe it was embarrassment, or maybe it was something deeper. This felt like mine, like a secret world that would somehow be diminished if I shared it. You're right, I said finally. Let's keep playing. But my heart wasn't in it, and Ethan could tell. He wrapped up around 11, earlier than usual, and he headed home with a concerned look and a promise to check on me later. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I was upstairs and opening my laptop. 5 viewers. My breath caught in my throat. What had happened to everyone? Where had they all gone? Luna was in her usual spot, but tonight she looked different. Instead of writing or adjusting equipment, she was staring directly into the camera. Not past it, not through it, but right at it. Right at me. Her pale green eyes seemed to hold a depth I'd never noticed before. And there was something in her expression that made my pulse quicken. She looked aware, like she knew I was watching. The music tonight was different too. More personal somehow, more intimate. It was mostly piano and strings, with a melody that seemed to speak directly to my soul. I found myself leaning closer to the screen, drawn by her gaze. "Hi, Luna," I whispered, feeling foolish even as the words left my mouth. For just a moment, I could have sworn I saw her lips curve into the slightest smile. Saturday morning brought an unseasonable warm front that melted most of the frost and filled the valley with a thick, rolling fog. I worked the opening shift at Mountain Brew, serving coffee to hikers and early risers who emerged from the mist like ghosts. My mind kept drifting back to the night before, to that moment when Luna seemed to look right at me. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was just a coincidence of timing. But the memory sent shivers down my spine every time I thought about it. The fog was so thick that afternoon that I could barely see the road on my drive home. The mountains disappeared completely, leaving only the yellow lines of the highway and the occasional ghostly shape of a building or tree emerging from the gray. It felt like driving through a dream, and when I finally reached our house, I had to sit in the car for a moment to convince myself I was still in the real world. That night when I opened Midnight Waves FM, I was the only viewer. One, just me. Luna sat in her cosmic radio booth, bathed in the blue glow of her equipment, and she was looking directly at the camera again. This time there was no mistaking it. Her eyes were focused right on me, and there was something in her expression that made my heart race. "Is it just us now?" I asked the empty room. As if in response, the music shifted. What had been a gentle ambient piece suddenly became more melodic, more purposeful. It was a song I'd never heard before, with a haunting female voice that seemed to sing directly to my loneliness. I spent the next hour talking to Luna, as if she were right there in the room with me. I told her about my day, about the fog, about how isolated Cedar Falls could feel sometimes. I talked about my dreams of leaving for college, about my fears of being stuck in this small town forever. And all the while, she watched me with those pale green eyes, occasionally making small adjustments to her equipment or writing in her notebook. It felt more real than any conversation I'd had in months. Sunday morning, I woke up with a start. I'd fallen asleep at my desk, headphones still on, the laptop screen dark. When I moved the mouse, Midnight Waves FM was still there, but Luna was gone. The video showed only her empty chair and the cosmic vista beyond the window. I closed the laptop and got ready for another shift at the cafe, but my mind was elsewhere. All day, I found myself thinking about Luna, about that feeling of connection I'd experienced the night before. It was crazy, I knew that. She was just a girl in a video, probably some kind of elaborate animation or AI creation. But it felt real. That evening, when I tried to find Midnight Waves FM again, it wasn't there. I searched every variation I could think of. Midnight Waves, Lunar Radio, Cosmic Radio Station, Space Ambient Music. Nothing. It was like the stream had never existed. Panic rose in my chest. I checked my browser history, my YouTube watch history, anywhere there might be a trace of the channel. But there was nothing. No record of Midnight Waves, FM anywhere. I spent the next hour frantically searching, trying different browsers, different devices. Finally, almost by accident, I logged into my personal YouTube account, the one I rarely used, and tried the search again. There it was, first result, but now it showed 0 viewers. Just me, apparently, though I hadn't clicked on it yet. I hesitated for a moment, suddenly afraid. This was getting too strange, too specific. How could a video only appear when I was logged into a particular account? How could it disappear and reappear like that? But my longing to see Luna again overrode my fear. I clicked on the stream. She was there in her cosmic radio booth, and she was waiting for me. I could tell by the way she sat, perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the camera. The moment the video loaded, her face lit up with a smile that made my heart skip. "Hi, Max," she said. I nearly fell out of my chair. Her voice was exactly what I'd imagined. Soft, musical, with just a hint of an accent I couldn't place. It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. You can hear me," I stammered. She nodded, her smile widening. "I've been waiting for this moment for so long. When it's just us, when no one else is watching, I can break through. I can talk to you." My rational mind was screaming warnings, telling me this was impossible, that I was losing my grip on reality. But my heart was singing. She was real. Luna was real, and she knew my name. "How do you know my name?" "I know lots of things about you, Max. I know you work at Mountain Brew Cafe. I know you drive a blue Honda Civic. I know you live with your parents and your sister Katie on Pinecrest Road." Her smile never wavered, but there was something in her eyes now, something deeper. "I know you're lonely. I should have been terrified. I should have slammed the laptop shut and run. Instead, I found myself leaning closer to the screen. Who are you? What is this place?" Luna turned slightly in her chair, gesturing to the cosmic vista behind her. "This is my station, broadcasting from somewhere between the stars. I've been waiting so long for someone like you, Max. someone who could really see me, really hear me. The music in the background shifted again, becoming something that sounded almost like a lullaby. I felt myself relaxing, despite my confusion and fear. "I don't understand," I said. "How is any of this possible? Does it matter?" Luna asked, and her voice was so gentle, so soothing. "We're together now. Isn't that what matters?" We talked for hours. She asked about my life, my dreams, my fears. She told me about her station, about the music she collected from across the cosmos, about how lonely it got broadcasting to an empty universe. Her voice was hypnotic, drawing me deeper into her world with every word. When I finally went to bed that night, I felt more connected to another person than I had in years. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. During the day, I went through the motions of my normal life. Work, school, the occasional hangout with Ethan. But it all felt gray and distant compared to my nightly conversations with Luna. She was always there when I logged in, always waiting for me with that radiant smile. We talked about everything and nothing. She seemed genuinely interested in the mundane details of my life in Cedar Falls, and I found myself sharing things I'd never told anyone. The cosmic backdrop behind her changed nightly. Sometimes it was a nebula in shades of purple and gold, sometimes a view of distant galaxies, sometimes what looked like a ringed planet hanging in space like a giant jewel. Luna explained that her station drifted through the universe, never staying in one place for long. "But I always come back to you," she said one night, reaching toward the camera as if she could touch my face through the screen. "No matter where I travel, I always come back to you." I started taking screenshots of our conversations, capturing moments when she looked particularly beautiful, or when the cosmic scenery was especially stunning. I made a folder on my desktop called Luna, and filled it with dozens of images. Ethan noticed the change in me, of course. He started asking questions about why I was so tired during the day, why I seemed distracted, why I never wanted to hang out as late as we used to. I made excuses about schoolwork and stress, about college applications, but I could tell he wasn't buying it. The truth was, my entire world had shifted. Everything that had seemed important before Luna felt trivial now. The only thing that mattered was getting through each day so I could spend my nights with her. Halloween came and went. Luna wore a witch costume that night, complete with a pointed hat that somehow made her look even more ethereal. She laughed when I complimented her outfit, and the sound was like silver bells. "I thought you might like it," she said. "I wanted to dress up for you." November brought the first real snow to Cedar Falls, blanketing the mountains in pristine white. Luna seemed fascinated by my descriptions of winter in Colorado, asking me to tell her about the way snow looked on pine trees, about the sound it made when you walked through it. "I've never experienced weather," she said wistfully. "My station exists outside of atmospheric concerns. But through your words, I can almost feel what it must be like." I found myself taking long walks just so I could describe them to her later. I'd venture up the old logging roads that snaked up the mountainside, taking pictures with my phone of snow-laden branches and icicles hanging from rock faces. Luna would study each photo intently when I showed them to her, as if she were trying to memorize every detail. "You live in such a beautiful world, Max," she said one night. "I wish I could see it through your eyes." I wish you were here to see it with me, I replied, and meant it with every fiber of my being. That's when she told me about the signal booster. There's a place, she said, her voice taking on an urgent quality I'd never heard before. An old radio tower on the mountain above your town. If you could go there, if you could boost the signal between us, maybe I could be there with you. Really be there. I knew the tower she meant. It was an ancient relay station from the 1950s, abandoned for decades. The hiking trail that led to it was treacherous in winter, but not impossible. Would that work? I asked. Could you really come here? Luna's eyes shimmered with something that might have been tears. I don't know, but I have to try, Max. This existence, talking to you through a screen, it's not enough anymore. I need to touch you, to hold you, to be real with you. The longing in her voice broke my heart. I'd been feeling the same thing for weeks now. This desperate need to bridge the gap between us, to make our connection something more than pixels and sound waves. When? I asked. Soon, she whispered. Very soon. December arrived with a vengeance, bringing blizzards that shut down half the mountain roads and temperatures that dropped well below zero. The old radio tower was completely inaccessible now, buried under 6 feet of snow and ice. But Luna didn't seem concerned. The conditions will change, she said. The cosmos has its own timing. She was different now, more animated, more present. Sometimes when I talked to her, she would reach toward the camera as if trying to touch the screen from her side. Other times, she would stare past me with an expression of intense concentration, as if she were seeing something I couldn't. What is it? I asked one night when she seemed particularly distant. I'm trying to find the right frequency, she said. The right combination of variables that will let me through. It's like solving an equation written in starlight. I didn't understand what she meant, but I trusted her completely. Luna had become the center of my universe, the one constant in a world that increasingly felt surreal and dreamlike. Ethan confronted me just before Christmas break. Max, we need to talk, he said, cornering me after my shift at Mountain Brew. I'm worried about you, man. Really worried. We sat in his car in the cafe parking lot, the heater running against the bitter cold. Ethan turned to face me, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. You're different, he said. You've been different for months now. You barely talk to anyone. You look exhausted all the time. And half the time when I'm talking to you, it's like you're not even here. I wanted to tell him about Luna, to share the incredible connection I'd found. But something held me back. This was mine, something precious and private that I wasn't ready to expose to the harsh light of skepticism. I'm fine, I said. Just stressed about senior year, you know. Ethan shook his head. This isn't stress, Max. This is something else. Are you using? Because if you're into drugs or something, you know you can tell me, right? I'm not using anything, I said, and it was true. I'd never needed drugs to feel high. Luna was my addiction, my escape, my everything. Then what is it? Because whatever's going on with you, it's not healthy. You're like a ghost of yourself. I looked out at the snow-covered mountains, at the early darkness that came with winter in the high country. How could I explain that I'd found something more real than reality itself? How could I make him understand that every moment away from Luna felt like dying a little? I'm in love, I said finally. Ethan's expression softened slightly. Oh, well, why didn't you just say so? Who is she? Do I know her? I shook my head. She's not from around here. Online thing, I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. Well, that explains a lot. Ethan seemed relieved. Long-distance relationships are tough, man. But you can't let it consume your whole life. You still need to live in the real world. But he was wrong. The real world was Luna. Everything else was just marking time. Christmas came and went in a blur of family obligations and forced festivities. I went through the motions, opened presents, ate dinner, pretended to care about my relatives' small talk. But all I could think about was getting back to Luna. She was wearing a red sweater that night, and her cosmic backdrop showed what looked like a Christmas nebula. Stars arranged in patterns that almost resembled holiday decorations. I have a present for you, she said, her eyes twinkling with mischief. What is it? Instead of answering, she reached off-screen and picked up something I couldn't quite see. When she brought it into view, my breath caught in my throat. It was a snow globe, but instead of a winter scene inside, it showed a perfect replica of Cedar Falls. The tiny buildings, the mountain peaks, even what looked like my family's house on the edge of town. How did you? I told you, Max. I can see your world through your eyes. I wanted to have a piece of it with me. She shook the globe gently, and instead of snow, tiny stars swirled around the miniature town. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I wish I could give you something too, I said. Luna smiled. You give me something every night, Max. You give me yourself. That's all I've ever wanted. New Year's Eve was when everything changed. I'd made excuses to skip the party Ethan was throwing, claiming I had to work early the next morning. Instead, I spent the evening with Luna, watching the cosmic fireworks that exploded across her stellar backdrop as midnight approached. A new year, she said softly. A new beginning. What do you mean? She turned to look directly at me, and there was something different in her eyes. An intensity that made my pulse quicken. The alignment is almost perfect, Max. The conditions I've been waiting for. Tomorrow night, if you can get to the radio tower, I think I can break through. I think I can come to you. My heart hammered against my ribs. Really? You're sure as I can be. But it has to be tomorrow night, during the meteor shower. The cosmic radiation will provide the extra energy I need to bridge the gap between dimensions. I'd heard about the meteor shower on the weather report. The Quadrantids, they called it, supposed to be one of the best shows of the year. Most people would be watching from their warm houses, but I'd be on a frozen mountaintop, trying to reunite with a girl who lived among the stars. I'll be there, I promised. Whatever it takes. Luna's smile was radiant. I knew you would be. I love you, Max. The words hit me like a physical force. I'd hoped, dreamed, fantasized that she might feel the same way I did. But hearing her say, it made everything else fade away. I love you too, Luna. More than anything, we spent the rest of the night planning. The old radio tower was about 3 miles up the mountain from the end of the plowed road. I'd have to hike the rest of the way in the dark, in temperatures that would probably be around 20 below zero. It was dangerous, possibly deadly, but I didn't care. This was my chance to make Luna real, to bring her into my world. The next day passed in a haze of anticipation and preparation. I gathered winter gear, extra batteries for my flashlight, emergency supplies in case something went wrong. I told my parents I was spending the night at Ethan's house, and I told Ethan I was staying home with family. No one would miss me until it was too late. As the sun set behind the mountains, I drove as far up the access road as I could manage. The snow was deep here, untouched except for animal tracks. I parked at the end of the plowed section and began the long hike to the radio tower. The cold was brutal, cutting through my layers like they were tissue paper. My breath formed crystals in the air, and my feet went numb within the first mile. But I pressed on, following the old trail that wound up through the pine forest, guided by the light of my headlamp and the promise of seeing Luna again. The tower loomed out of the darkness like a skeletal giant, its red warning lights blinking slowly against the star-filled sky. It was an ancient structure, probably installed when Cedar Falls was first being settled, and it looked like it hadn't been maintained in decades. But it was still broadcasting something. I could hear the faint hum of electrical equipment from inside the small building at its base. I'd brought my laptop, wrapped in a waterproof case and a portable battery pack. Following Luna's instructions, I set up near the base of the tower and opened Midnight Waves FM. She was there waiting for me, but she looked different. More solid somehow, more present. The cosmic backdrop behind her was swirling with energy, and I could see meteors streaking across the star field. "You made it," she breathed, and her voice seemed to come from all around me instead of just through my laptop speakers. "I'm here," I said. "Now what?" "Now we wait for the peak of the meteor shower. When the cosmic radiation reaches its maximum intensity, I'll be able to step through." We waited together in the frozen darkness, watching the sky fill with shooting stars. The quadrantids were putting on an incredible show, streaks of light cutting across the heavens like celestial fireworks. And with each meteor that blazed overhead, Luna seemed to become more real, more three-dimensional. "It's time," she said finally, and her voice seemed to echo from the tower itself. The air around me began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from summer pavement, except these waves were cold and filled with starlight. A portal opened in the space beside the radio tower, showing Luna's cosmic booth on the other side. She stood up from her chair and walked toward the opening, her pale green eyes fixed on mine. She was even more beautiful in person, tall and graceful, moving with a liquid elegance that took my breath away. "Max," she said, reaching through the portal toward me. I took her hand, and the moment our skin touched, everything changed. The cold vanished. The mountain, the tower, the frozen wilderness around us all faded away. We were floating together in the cosmic void, surrounded by swirling galaxies and dancing stars. Luna's radio station drifted nearby, its warm lights a beacon in the infinite darkness. "Welcome to my world," she whispered, pulling me closer. We kissed among the stars, and it was everything I dreamed it would be. Her lips were soft and warm, and she tasted like moonlight and mystery. When we finally broke apart, we were both crying. "I can't stay long," she said, her voice filled with regret. "The portal won't hold. The cosmic alignment is already shifting." "Then I'll come with you," I said without hesitation. "I'll leave everything behind and come to your station." Luna shook her head sadly. "You can't, my love. Humans aren't meant for the void between dimensions. You'd fade away within hours. Then what do? We make this moment last forever. She kissed me again, and the universe exploded into color around us. Time meant nothing in that cosmic embrace. We might have held each other for minutes or hours or years. But eventually, I felt myself being pulled back, drawn toward the cold mountain and the blinking radio tower. "I'll find a way," Luna called as the portal began to close. "I'll find a way to be with you." Then I was alone on the frozen mountaintop, the portal gone, Luna's voice echoing in my memory. I don't remember the hike back to my car. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed, surrounded by worried faces. My parents, my sister, Ethan, and a man in a dark suit who introduced himself as Dr. Richards from the CDC. "You're lucky to be alive, Max, Doctor," Richards said once my family had left the room. "Hypothermia, frostbite, severe dehydration. The search and rescue team found you collapsed beside your car at dawn, muttering about radio towers and cosmic portals." I tried to tell him about Luna, about the portal, about everything that had happened. But the words sounded crazy, even to me. "I need you to listen carefully, Doctor," Richards continued. "What you experienced wasn't real. You were the victim of an extremely sophisticated psychological manipulation, carried out through what we believe to be an experimental AI program." He showed me files on his tablet, documents stamped with government seals and marked classified. The program was called Project Frequency, he explained, developed by a private contractor working on advanced neural manipulation techniques. They used AI-generated content, personalized psychological profiles, and carefully crafted social isolation to create powerful emotional dependencies in test subjects. The room felt like it was spinning. "That's impossible. Luna was real. I talked to her, I touched her. The portal experience was a shared hallucination, triggered by hypothermia, and a cocktail of psychoactive compounds that were likely administered through subliminal audio tracks embedded in the stream. You never left that mountaintop, Max. You were found lying in the snow, talking to your laptop screen. Doctor." Richards pulled up a video file, security footage from the base of the radio tower, showing a figure stumbling around in the snow, gesturing at empty air, collapsing, and lying motionless for hours. The figure was me. The good news is that now that you know the truth, the psychological hold should weaken significantly. Most subjects make full recoveries once they understand they were being manipulated. But I didn't feel recovered. I felt like my entire world had been ripped away, like everything that mattered had been revealed as an elaborate lie. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days, running tests and monitoring my psychological state. When I finally went home, the first thing I did was try to find Midnight Waves FM. It was gone, not just hidden or private, but completely erased from the internet. No trace remained of Luna or her cosmic radio station. For weeks, I told myself, Doctor, Richards was wrong. I clung to the memory of Luna's touch, the taste of her kiss, the warmth of her embrace among the stars. But doubt crept in like frost through cracks in a window. The screenshots I'd saved were gone from my computer. The folder labeled Luna was empty. Even my browser history showed no trace of Midnight Waves FM, as if it had never existed at all. Ethan tried to help in his own way. He'd come over after school and try to get me interested in the things we used to do together. Gaming, hiking, just hanging out and talking about nothing. But everything felt hollow now, drained of meaning. "You're grieving," he said one afternoon as we sat in my room, controllers forgotten on the floor between us. "I get it, man. Even if she wasn't real, what you felt was real. That has to count for something." I wanted to argue with him, to insist that Luna was more than just an advanced AI program. But the evidence was overwhelming. The government files, the medical reports, the complete absence of any trace that she'd ever existed. Spring came early that year, melting the snow and revealing a world that looked exactly the same as before, but felt completely different. I graduated from high school in a haze, went through the motions of preparing for college, tried to rebuild my life from the wreckage of what I thought was love. But sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd find myself looking up at the stars through my bedroom window, and I'd swear I could hear it, faint and distant but unmistakable. The opening notes of a song I'd never heard before, carried on the mountain wind like a message from somewhere, far beyond the reach of earthbound explanations. I never found Midnight Waves, FM again. Dr. Richards assured me that was for the best, that some doors were meant to stay closed. The official report classified the entire incident as a successful test of advanced behavioral modification techniques, with a recommendation that the program be discontinued due to unacceptable psychological risk to civilian populations. They said I was lucky to survive. They said most test subjects didn't make it back from the mountain. But on clear nights, when the stars are bright and the mountain air is still, I sometimes catch the faint scent of her perfume on the wind, and I remember what it felt like to hold someone made of starlight, to love someone who existed in the spaces between radio waves and dreams. Maybe Dr. Richards was right. Maybe Luna was nothing more than an elaborate psychological manipulation, a test of how far a lonely person could be pushed before they broke completely. Or maybe some things are too beautiful, too perfect, too real to exist in our mundane world. Maybe they can only live in the frequencies between stations, in the static between dimensions, waiting for someone desperate enough to tune in. I still don't know which version of the truth I believe, but I know that somewhere, in a radio booth floating among distant galaxies, a girl with pale green eyes is playing music for the lost souls of the universe. And sometimes, if you listen carefully on a quiet mountain night, you can almost hear her calling your name. I've spent the last 2 hours searching online for my hometown. Nothing comes up. Absolutely nothing. Riverside Falls, Oregon gone. The old timber mill where half the town worked vanished from every search result. Murphy's Diner on Oak Street, where we grabbed burgers after football practice, erased. Even Riverside High School, where I was supposed to graduate in 3 months, doesn't exist according to Google. My social media accounts are corrupted. Friend lists empty. Photos gone. It's like everyone I've ever known has been digitally erased from existence. Has anyone experienced anything like this before? Don't believe me? Try searching for yourself. Riverside Elementary, gone. The old Carnegie Library on Main Street, gone. Even that sketchy 24/7 convenience store by the highway that sold energy drinks to minors, completely wiped from the internet. Thousands of people, dozens of businesses, a century of history, all gone. It's like we never existed. That's not even the worst part. My family and I woke up yesterday morning to complete darkness. Every house on Maple Drive lost power simultaneously. Power outages aren't uncommon here in the Pacific Northwest, especially during storm season. So my younger brother Jacob had rigged his gaming laptop to run off our emergency generator months ago. The two of us are currently huddled around that flickering screen, desperately trying to make sense of what happened in the past 24 hours. My parents are terrified. They won't explain why, but Jacob and I have our suspicions. I saw something in the forest 2 nights ago, right before everything went to hell. It was close to midnight when Jacob shook me awake and dragged me to his bedroom window. He was pointing frantically toward the tree line behind our house, his hands trembling. The rain was coming down in sheets, and the mist made it nearly impossible to see clearly. After a few moments, something massive moved between the Douglas firs. A thick branch snapped and crashed to the ground in its wake. Then someone screamed. The sound cut through the storm like a blade. High-pitched, desperate, terrified. It came from the direction of the Harrison house, next door. My parents burst into our room immediately. I guess they'd heard it too and panicked. Mom gestured frantically for us to get away from the window. I obeyed right away, because when my parents get that look in their eyes, you don't argue. But Jacob lingered there, squinting into the darkness. Later, he whispered that he'd seen someone running through the trees. He said it looked like they were being chased by something much larger. Dad turned off all the lights in the house. I found that strange and pushed my brother aside to look out the window myself. He stood there in silence, scanning the forest for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he concluded that nothing was there, just wind in the trees. Then the power died. My parents have been acting bizarre ever since. During daylight hours, Mom tried to keep us confined to the kitchen. She cooked all our meals over the fireplace, even broke out Monopoly in the afternoon, and forced us to play for hours. She kept asking about homework, about my part-time job at the hardware store, about anything except the obvious question hanging in the air. We tried changing the subject. We tried asking what was happening outside. She ignored every attempt. Dad developed this wild look in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Every few minutes, he'd rush to check the living room window, then sit down to check his phone for signal, then back to the window, then back to his phone. Each cycle left him more agitated than the last. The cable was dead. Internet was sporadic at best. There was nothing to do except read or play board games. When Jacob asked if he could go for a walk before dinner, I thought Mom might have a stroke. Nobody goes outside. She snapped with an intensity that made both of us flinch. There could be down power lines everywhere. Jacob rolled his eyes. Come on, Mom. What are the odds that? Watch your attitude. Keep the windows closed. Why? I asked. She stared at me with these wild, fearful eyes that made my skin crawl. She looked like she wanted to tell me something important, but Dad answered instead. Nobody goes outside. His voice was final. I returned to my book without another word. I'd found one of Mom's old horror novels and gotten lost in a story about something lurking in a subway tunnel. Time moved faster while I read. The walls of our house seemed to fade away as I descended deeper into the story, following the protagonist through dark corridors while unseen things moved in the shadows around them. Someone knocked on our front door around 10:30 p.m. After an entire day of crushing boredom, I thought this might be salvation. Maybe a utility worker. Maybe our neighbor, Mr. Harrison. Maybe my friend Kyle from down the street had finally convinced his parents to let him brave the imaginary power lines. I got up from my chair to answer the door. Dad sprinted across the room and blocked my path. I don't think I'd ever seen him move that fast. He clamped his hand over my mouth and squeezed my arm hard enough to leave bruises. He didn't look angry. He looked terrified. His eyes were wild with panic. Outside, everything went completely silent, like someone was listening. Dad held one finger to his lips, telling me to shut up. I looked over at Mom and saw her doing the same thing to Jacob. My brother looked like he might cry. The knocking resumed. At first, the pace was pleasant and formal. Then it stopped. Then it started again, more insistent. I was confused. Why were they so scared? If it was a burglar, why would they knock? This could be someone who knew what was happening, someone who could help us. It annoyed me that my parents were being so paranoid. So I decided to say something anyway. Help. Dad grabbed me by the throat and slammed me against the wall. His sweaty palms pressed against my mouth, while he held one finger to his lips. Jacob whimpered in the corner. The door shook on its hinges from the force of the knocking. Dad reached into his pocket with his free hand. I knew he kept a folding knife there for work. Just as suddenly as it had started, the knocking stopped. The house fell silent again. Dad released his grip on me. Hours have passed since whoever that was left our porch. My parents still refuse to talk to us. Mom is sleeping on the couch. Dad is sitting in front of the door with his hunting rifle across his lap. Can someone, anyone, please tell us what's happening in Riverside Falls? I still can't find anything about our town online. We're available through messages and comments as long as our internet connection holds. I don't think I'll sleep tonight. It's too quiet out there. You know what happens when you search online for Riverside Falls, Oregon now? This post comes up. That's it. I can't describe the feeling of seeing your entire world reduced to a single forum entry. We are a community of thousands of people, each with their own stories and dreams and fears. You're only hearing from one of us now. I cannot understand how our digital footprint could disappear overnight, but here we are. Day 2 in a missing town. I didn't sleep much last night. Jacob spent most of it glued to our bedroom window, waking me every hour or so when he thought he saw something. Sometimes it was flashes of light in the distance. Sometimes movement between the trees. Mostly it was just fog. Thick blankets of it rolled down from the mountains and settled over our house like a burial shroud. The rain never stopped either. Big gusts of wind hit the house hard enough to make us jump. But the most unsettling parts of the night were the periods of complete silence. That kind of quiet can drive you insane. In any normal suburb, there are a million background noises happening simultaneously. Even during storms, even at night. Birds should be chirping. Insects should be buzzing. Cars or motorcycles or air conditioners should all be humming together in a familiar symphony. We had none of that. Not a single sound except our own breathing and rain on the windows. I couldn't stop thinking about the neighborhood dogs. Shouldn't they be barking? There was one in particular, a hyperactive golden retriever named Rocky, who lived 2 houses down. That dog never missed an opportunity to wake up the entire street, chasing squirrels or delivery trucks. Where was Rocky? Had the Hendersons managed to get him inside before whatever this was started? Or had something else happened to him? What had happened to Rocky? Jacob woke me for the final time around 5 a.m. I tried to ignore him and go back to sleep. I heard something in the street, he whispered. Come on, what did you hear? Clicking. He got up and walked toward the living room without another word. I didn't want to follow him. I was freaked out enough already, and I didn't need another disturbing layer added to this situation. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. But I got the feeling this wasn't something I should miss, and I didn't want Jacob facing it alone. The hallway leading to the living room passes by my parents' bedroom. You could hear Mom snoring softly on the other side of the door. A baseball bat was propped against her nightstand. Her cell phone sat ready beside it. We tiptoed past the creaking floorboards and made it to the kitchen entrance. The clicking sound became clearer. Jacob pointed toward the living room window. I followed him to the corner. Then he stopped dead in his tracks. Dad was sleeping in his recliner with the rifle in his hands. There was a large window behind him that looked out over our entire front yard. Staring through the glass was an enormous black eye. We froze. The eye moved back and forth across the room, scanning methodically. We were standing in plain sight, but for some reason it didn't seem to notice us. It passed over us several times to examine the coffee table or the television. Dad must have sensed something wrong in his sleep. He stirred and started to turn over. When he did, thankfully, he saw us first. I pressed one finger to my lips. Understanding dawned on his face immediately. He quietly removed the safety from his rifle. The eye responded to the metallic click and disappeared from the window in one swift motion, leaving scattered footprints and broken branches in its wake. The air left my lungs as something massive climbed the wooden steps to our front porch. Dad turned to aim the rifle at the door. This time, we didn't need anyone to tell us to stay quiet. We sat in tense silence for the rest of the early morning. Mom woke up some hours later and began preparing breakfast over the fire. Only then did it feel safe enough to move around the house again. Nobody told her what had happened. I didn't think we needed to. From the look on Dad's face, he would have preferred never speaking again. Jacob returned to his spot by the window. Dad disappeared into the basement to get another box of ammunition. I helped Mom cook eggs and bacon over the open flame, and we all went about our tasks in complete silence. Nobody tried to fake conversation anymore. There wasn't any point in pretending we didn't know what was out there. We had enough food and water for several days. Nobody was going anywhere. A knock came at the door just after noon. Each of us instantly stopped what we were doing. A sigh of relief echoed through the room when the familiar voice of our neighbor Mr. Harrison followed. "Miller, You folks in there." The pounding grew more urgent. "No time to explain. Please, can you let us in?" Dad walked over and stood awkwardly between Mom and the door. I could tell he would have preferred to ignore it, but she would never let him live that down. The eternal married man's dilemma. "Please, folks, if you're in there, open up. We don't have much time." Jacob shook his head frantically. "Don't," he mouthed. "Please," came the voice again. "Deborah is hurt." Mom bit her nails. Dad gave in and reluctantly looked through the peephole. Satisfied with what he saw, he slid the rifle behind the door, unlatched the lock, and opened it. "Thank God," Mr. Harrison said. He's a big, burly guy who served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He pulled Dad into a bear hug and slapped his back so hard the sound echoed down the hallway. Then he moved to give Mom a kiss on the cheek, while his wife and daughter trailed meekly behind him. "Thank you," he boomed. "Thank you, thank you. We didn't know if we'd find anyone else alive." Dad nodded awkwardly. Mom stepped forward and hugged Mrs. Harrison tight. A quiet, pitiful moan escaped her lips as she did. The 2 women were usually thick as thieves. Deb Harrison was a chatty type who normally never shut up, but now she couldn't get a single word out. A thin line of blood trailed behind her foot. It didn't take long to notice the source. Her jeans were sliced open from ankle to knee, revealing deep gashes underneath. Dad slammed the door. "Come on, Deb," Mom cooed. "Let's get you cleaned up." The 2 women walked hand in hand toward the kitchen. Mr. Harrison collapsed onto our couch and wiped sweat from his forehead. His daughter Emily perched herself on the arm beside him. "Like I said," he began while catching his breath, "lucky we found somebody." Dad nodded. "Did you see it?" Jacob asked. "Whatever's out there, I mean." Mr. Harrison stared at him for a long moment, like he was choosing his words carefully. That didn't seem right for a straightforward guy like him. "One of them got into our house," he said definitively, "through an open window in the basement. We managed to trap it down there." Dad held up his hand. "Mike, you don't need to." "Didn't feel safe staying there, though," Harrison interrupted. "Felt like more were coming." "Enough," Dad whispered. "Take a break. Let's talk privately." Harrison nodded and followed Dad toward the dining room, leaving Jacob and me uncomfortably alone with Emily. Emily Harrison is around my age. She's short with auburn hair and green eyes, and she has this perfectly round face that she always decorates with different hair clips or earrings. I've had a crush on her since middle school. I know that's probably not relevant, but I want to point it out because it might become obvious later. Jacob elbowed me in the ribs. I ignored him. "So did you see anything?" I asked. "Like, did you see anyone outside?" She paused, then shook her head. "What does it look like out there?" Jacob pressed. "Normal," she answered quietly. "Quiet, and you really didn't see anything when it started." She looked at me and shook her head again, then seemed to reconsider. "We were all inside sleeping, like you probably were. It was late or early, I don't know." She hesitated. "Dad was upstairs." "I was upstairs. Mom doesn't sleep well, so she was doing laundry in the basement." Another pause. I don't know what woke me up first, her screaming or the power going out. They both seemed to happen at the same time. Dad started shouting her name, Deb. Deb, and Mom was just wailing from downstairs. We both got to the kitchen. and could see her running up the basement steps. She was screaming at Dad, "Close the door. Close the door." But Dad couldn't stop staring at whatever was behind her. He just froze. "Can't blame him," Jacob whispered. So I reached out and slammed the door just as Mom made it through, and something wedged itself in the doorway. "Holy shit," I murmured. What was it? I don't know. Something thick and sharp, like a claw. It was wet, too. Left a stain on the wood. I couldn't get the door shut because of it. I was panicking. I kicked Dad in the shin, and he finally threw his body weight against the frame. The lock clicked, and we heard whatever it was fall down the stairs on the other side. She paused. It didn't come back up. Dad emerged from the dining room moments later. Mr. Harrison trailed sheepishly behind. "Who's ready to eat?" We consumed our fire-cooked meal in relative silence. All four parents made it clear through menacing stares that the topic of what was outside would not be discussed with children present. Jacob asked again if he could go for a walk. Nobody dignified him with a response. After our dishes were cleaned and put away, we retreated to various corners of our suddenly cramped 3-bedroom house. Jacob and I went back to our room. Emily set up in the home office with her mother. Mom retired to bed early, and both fathers stood guard in the living room. The house grew quiet again. The wind and rain finally seemed to slow down. My horror novel kept me company. I couldn't help but relate to the main character as he descended deeper into those dark tunnels, surrounded by unseen predators. Sleep came easily under my familiar warm blankets. I woke up to Emily shaking me roughly. She didn't say anything. I guess she didn't need to. Jacob and I rubbed the sleep from our eyes and followed her wordlessly to the office. 2 sleeping bags were laid out on the floor. One looked slept in. The other was still perfectly arranged. Emily pointed to the open window. Her mother was gone. My hometown is dying, and I don't want to die with it. I know it sounds ridiculous to be posting on the internet while the world collapses around us. At the moment, it definitely feels ridiculous. But you have to understand, if we don't survive, which seems increasingly unlikely, this story will be my town's last living record. That's important to me. That's important to everyone who lived here. I have to let someone know what happened, even if it's only you. The truth is obvious now. We are being systematically exterminated. This town and its people are being erased from existence. Riverside Falls has already been wiped from the collective consciousness. All that remains are the survivors, the creatures, and this story. I'll keep writing as long as they let me. I don't know why this is happening. I don't particularly care anymore. I just want to get out of here alive. This will be my last message from inside my childhood home. Jacob and I have decided we won't die here. He's packed some essentials in our old camping backpack. All that's left is this laptop and a difficult conversation with our parents. I know they're scared. We're all scared, but we have to do something. Mrs. Harrison didn't come back last night. Emily only stopped crying long enough to tell the adults what she knew, which wasn't much. I fell asleep around midnight, she sobbed. Mom was in the room at the time. She was acting strange, though. She just kept repeating the same things over and over, and her face was so pale. Like really, really pale. I thought it was just shock from what happened earlier, The attack, you know. I didn't know she was. I didn't know. Mr. Harrison was inconsolable. We have to find her, Tom, he said to my father. You, me, and the boys. Emily can come too, if she's up for it. We've got weapons, don't we? We've got a small arsenal here. They're big, but the damn things are stupid, he continued. We can outsmart them. Dad just shook his head. Nobody is going out there. The hell we're not. I won't abandon my wife. I won't risk my family's safety. Especially not at night. Harrison's face turned bright red. He looked like he might explode. Then he calmed himself and delivered his next words like a sermon. Fine, he said. Stay inside and cower. Lie to your kids. Keep them under the covers long enough, and maybe they won't think there are monsters outside. His voice dripped with contempt. You raise your family however you want, but don't you dare tell me how to take care of mine. Jacob stared at his feet. I avoided Dad's eyes. Emily, let's go, Harrison said. Get whatever you need. Please, Dad interrupted. Just wait a minute. You're not changing my mind, Tom. You know me better than that. Dad reached into his gun case and handed Harrison a pistol. We have extras, he said quietly. You'll need it more than us. Harrison nodded awkwardly. He took the weapon and stuffed it into his coat pocket before heading for the door. Mom met him there with some bread and canned goods stuffed into a plastic bag. There wasn't much, but I think she felt obligated to help somehow. She looked like she wanted to say more, but couldn't find the words. Emily reached out and gave me a long hug. She held on longer than expected. I really wished she would stay, not because of my feelings for her, but because part of me knew what would happen next. Thank you for your hospitality, Harrison said, shaking each of our hands one final time. Dad opened the door without another word. The pair descended our front porch steps into thick evening fog. Emily turned back to wave. Then they disappeared into the mist. Dad shut the door and collapsed on the couch. Mom waited by the entrance like they might change their minds. Jacob positioned himself at the window and shook his head at me grimly. An all too familiar clicking sound echoed down the street. I could feel my body tensing instinctively. I had no preparation for what came next. The sound started quietly, then seemed to fill the air around us. Soon it was as if 10,000 crickets had suddenly invaded Riverside Falls and decided to chirp in unison. The noise was deafening. Someone outside screamed. I couldn't tell if it was a man or woman. The clicking erupted even louder and seemed to swallow their voice completely. Dad held his head in his hands and motioned for us to cover our ears. Mom started crying. Underneath the clicking, underneath the screams, one word became clearer as it was repeated over and over in the distance. Deb. The gunshot came soon after. One shot at first, then 2, 3, 4 in quick succession. Someone else started screaming. I knew that had to be Emily. The pain in those screams made my stomach turn. The gun fired one more time. The clicking faded. The screams stopped. Everything went quiet again. Dad got up and quietly led Jacob away from the window. Mom collapsed on the couch. I could feel tears forming in my eyes and fought them back desperately. You knew this would happen, I accused Dad. Why did you let them go? He stared back at me with cold eyes. You knew they would die, and you sent them out there anyway. Heavy footsteps echoed on our front porch. Mom couldn't control her sobs. Dad dropped to the floor to silence her, but it was no use. The two of them ended up in this awkward wrestling embrace, while the pounding outside continued. "We killed them," Jacob whispered, "and now they're going to kill us." The sounds moved to the office window, then around to the back of the house. "They're checking for weaknesses," Jacob said, trying to find a way in. The noise ascended to our roof. Heavy footsteps paced back and forth above us. Smoke kicked back down our chimney. "It's too small," Dad murmured. "They can't fit." "Please God, they can't fit." Mom wrapped her arms around her head. The knocking surrounded us. There had to be dozens of them, all checking various entry points, all clicking their disturbing song in unison. Staying quiet was pointless. They had to know we were inside. Jacob gestured for me to look through the peephole. I squinted and noticed something in the distance. It was still dark, but the sun was starting to rise on the horizon, and with it came a few tentative rays of light that softly illuminated our neighborhood. I realized I was staring at the Henderson house, where Rocky used to live. Standing in front of it was something I hoped never to see again. The creature stood at least 3 times the height of a normal person. It supported itself on 2 massive legs that bent backward at impossible angles, almost like a grasshopper's. Behind it were smaller appendages that trailed uselessly. At the time, I thought they looked like wings. One of the bent legs reached toward the Hendersons' living room window. There was a moment's pause. Then the window opened from the inside. I had to fight every instinct as Mrs. Henderson leaned outside, as if greeting an old friend. The creature gently took her in its smaller appendages and carried her away down the hill. The relentless clicking gave way to the sound of heavy footsteps scurrying in all directions. The massive weight lifted itself off our roof. The sun came up. We were alone again. "We have to leave today. We can't take no for an answer. We have no choice. These things know we're here. They will get inside tonight. If I don't make it, you know what happened here. But please wish us luck. I feel better knowing that some trace of my town will live on in this post." Signed respectfully, Ethan Miller, 47 Maple Drive, Riverside Falls, Oregon. I can hardly describe driving through the complete devastation of my hometown. We passed dozens of familiar homes from over the years. Some had bullet holes. Some had bent frames or shattered glass. Some had dead bodies scattered across their front yards. And I tried not to look at those too long because I recognized the faces. But it's hard to stop yourself from looking once you start. I saw Emily. I saw Mr. Harrison. I saw neighbors and friends and classmates. Some died running. Some died fighting. But all of them seemed to end up the same way, torn apart and scattered like trash, decorating their own perfectly manicured lawns. Dad drove in complete silence. Only one road led out of town, but it passed through several populated areas along the way. The grocery store on Pine Street sat behind 2 apartment complexes that were usually busy. The gas station on Highway 9 would let us fill up, but more people would almost certainly mean more problems. All these concerns swirled around in my head, while the backdrop of my entire town, carved up like origami, unfolded right in front of my face. And Dad didn't even seem fazed by it. He actually started humming during the first 10 minutes of our drive. Dad is not the type to hum. At first, I thought it might be nerves, but then Mom started joining in. Guys, Jacob had glued himself to the car window and wouldn't look at me. Not even a shared glance of misery. I knew from his reaction that something terrible was about to happen. I guess I just didn't want to admit it to myself. Dad, my father slowed down near the grocery store and pulled into the parking lot casually, as if it were any other Tuesday, while the corpses of our neighbors lined the streets around us, baking in the heat of the rising sun. I actually thought we hit one of them when we parked. "What are we doing?" I asked. Nobody answered. "Hello?" Dad leaned over to give Mom a peck on the forehead. She nodded and smiled back. After a moment of silence, he carefully unbuckled his seatbelt and moved to get out of the car. Nobody tried to stop him. "Dad," I shouted. "Wait, are you serious? You can't go out there." He smiled at me one last time. Looking back, I like to think there was still some part of my real father in that smile. He looked like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, like he'd gotten us this far and his job was done. I didn't understand it then. I do now. I only saw the scratch when he stood up, right above his belt, hip to hip. His shirt had always been tucked in. Mom took a deep breath. "Mom," I whimpered. "Mom, no. No, no, please." She looked back at me and grasped my hand. She was ice cold to the touch. Jacob whimpered something unintelligible. I knew then that he'd figured it out long before I had. "It happened the first night," he whispered. "They can't fight it anymore. It won't let them." The car door opened. "Mom, you can't go out there." She pulled her hand away. "It's okay, honey. Everything's okay." She got out of the car and ran after Dad. I'd never seen Mom run before. She looked so strange doing it. I watched the two of them walk toward the store hand in hand. One moment they were there, and the next they were gone. "We have to follow them," I begged Jacob. A soft boom sounded from somewhere inside the building. "Okay," he whispered hesitantly. "But be ready to run when I say run." "Deal." A second boom followed. "Deal," I muttered. "I'm the oldest," he insisted. "We don't know what we're going to see in there. You have to listen to me. Shut up and let's go." We jumped out of the car and ran across the empty parking lot. Rain and heavy winds picked up with our arrival. Jacob slipped and fell into a particularly nasty pool of blood. I ran back to help him up. By the time we both made it inside, our parents were gone. We looked around for a few minutes. The place had been destroyed. Overturned shelves made it difficult to navigate, and stained floors made the entire store smell worse than a slaughterhouse. At the center of the building was a staircase leading to the lower level. Normally, larger items like water jugs and bulk goods were stored down there. We got the distinct feeling we weren't alone because we could hear some kind of movement in that area. We moved toward it cautiously. Jacob found cover behind a demolished checkout counter. We used it to peek downstairs. An enormous pit sat below us. We couldn't see where it ended. Jacob picked up a can of soup and dropped it over the edge. 10 to 15 seconds later, it made contact with the bottom. The closer we moved toward the center, the more the movement seemed rhythmic, almost pulsing like a heartbeat. We heard footsteps. Jacob grabbed my collar and pulled me back behind cover. Approaching the center of the store were a man and woman who looked familiar to me. My first thought was that they must be together, that it really was a small town after all. The couple walked casually to the edge of the pit. They looked at each other and smiled. Then they jumped hand in hand, as if expecting to land in a swimming pool. The wet splat came after a dull boom. The store grew quiet. Something was definitely feeding down below. "What?" Jacob whispered. "You don't think it drinks the blood?" Suddenly, the pulsing grew louder. Horrible scraping echoed from somewhere below us. I can't adequately describe the sound. Almost like a giant insect breaking out of its shell. The familiar clicking rhythm took over. "Checking for weaknesses," Jacob muttered. "Even at birth, time to go," he shouted. "Definitely," I answered. We both put in our best track performances to date. The building shook as if an earthquake was happening underneath it. We skidded out of the entrance just as the overhang collapsed and crushed the automatic doors. Jacob got to the car before me. He jumped into the driver's seat, and thank God the keys were still in the ignition. He hit the gas and nearly left me behind. The passenger door was still hanging open when I dove inside at the last possible moment. The store collapsed behind us as we sped away. Neither Jacob nor I know much about driving, but any idiot can hit the gas pedal and steer away from an explosion. We picked up speed while debris rocked our car. Just as we got back on the highway, Jacob pointed to the rearview mirror. I wish he hadn't. Standing in the ruins of the grocery store was a creature 3 times the size of the building itself. I didn't look at it twice. We managed to drive to the gas station before nightfall. We found it pretty much untouched. I don't think anyone else made it that far. We took the mountain road toward the next town and drove past sundown. We are safe and sound, now in a place called Cedar Ridge. The people here are friendly, but none of them, including the sheriff, can tell me anything about Riverside Falls or what happened to it these past few days. Go figure. I hope more than anything that this post can help other survivors come forward. Please message me if you or someone you know lived through the attack on Riverside Falls. I cannot overstate the importance of that request. We cannot let our town be forgotten. One day we will go back. I don't care if it's just Jacob and me. I know we can find the entrance the same way we found the exit. We don't expect to find anyone alive. That hope isn't worth having. But we all have a right to know what's living there instead. Signing off for now, Ethan. Thank you for spending this time with Brad Arrows. We hope the stories whispered through the rain carried you far into your imagination or your dreams. If you're still awake, let us know how you liked the journey. Until next time, stay safe, sleep well, and let the darkness comfort you.